Events begin with someone opening the door to the room. It turns out to be a man with two ladies. Someone in the room whispers and asks if this is the same bastard Joseph, and now he could be up to something again. One of the men claims that this is a fool who 5 years ago spent all his savings for a beautiful wife. And people say that they didn't even let her out into the street because Joseph is simply obsessed with her. Another voice says that the girl is really beautiful, and he also heard that Joseph liked another girl, and he quickly got bored with his wife. After getting drunk, he yelled that he wanted to get rid of his wife. That's why people think. Does he want to sell the girl? For Joseph, a wife was just a thing. He paid her like paying property taxes. Divorce was too expensive, and if the guy was not rich, then he could forget about it. So selling is the only way to get rid of his wife. Having concluded an agreement and received a certain amount, the wife becomes the property of the person who bought her. Now the guy is heading with two women, one of whom is his wife. After which the guy grins and clears his throat, and then they scream that the bidding can begin. He indicates that the starting bid is 10 rians. People immediately start raising the price. One of them offers a price of 190 rians, and the other raises it to 200. Then the man with red hair says that he will pay 210, and the other man says that he will pay 220. Joseph from this. And his mistress hugs him. Well, suddenly someone offers the amount of 300 rian. The man with gray hair thinks carefully about whether he should raise the price, but then simply creates it. Joseph congratulates the buyer and claims that he guarantees that this woman is obedient, although he does not know her well. Therefore, if something goes wrong, the buyer knows what to do. Joseph's mistress at this time comes up to the bar counter and says to go there if everything is the most expensive. And Polly says that the young lady needs to be explained well, because this way she will be obedient, and you can simply not look at this freak if the buyer doesn't like her. The man just looking at the young lady with lust says that it's good, after which he hands over the money. But suddenly, someone else shows up at the tavern and claims that he will give you 5,000 rians. All the people in shock begin to whisper to me whether they heard it. And the man with red hair screams that this is nonsense, and there are no such rich people there, so stop lying. But the stranger only places a gold bar in front of Joseph. Then he claims that if he sells this ingot, he will receive much more. The brown-haired man only thanks the gentleman and says with a smile that he scared everyone with such a sudden appearance. Well, after that, the guy just hits Joseph on the hand and claims that the deal is not finished yet. Then he hands over the document and states that all that remains is to sign. Joseph does just that. And then he claims that from now on, this woman belongs to him. The stranger in the robe then tells the main character that they will go. And the girl, in response to this, only looks at the buyer and is silent, after which the two of them go out into the street. A short time later, the two are already approaching the carriage, and the young man claims that they will go further. But first of all, he extends his hand to the young lady, which makes her very scared. You look at me trustingly at the guy's hand. But then she decides to pull herself together and look him in the eyes. The blonde then claims that he won't hurt the young lady, and that she should just stand still. After which the guy reaches out his hands to the girl's neck and removes the rope from her. Then he takes off his hood and says that his name is Yesh Brinicle, and he's also glad to meet you. The young man extends his hand to the main character, and the girl, after some deliberation, finally decides to meet him halfway. And she extends her hand in response, and then claims that her name is Chloe. After this, the young man takes the hand of the main character and invites her to go to the estate of the Marquis of Brinicles. A little time later, the main character is already lying in bed and thinks that this is such an unfamiliar ceiling, and she only remembers the way to this room, and also does not remember falling asleep and fainting while lying down. But suddenly the girl hears footsteps outside the door and gets scared. Well, only the maid comes into the room and wishes the lady good morning, then claims that her name is Betsy, and she will help the young lady get ready. But when the girl looks at her mistress's hands, she sees that they are shaking. Therefore, the maid turns to her and says that from now on, she will be the mistress's maid, so she can address her by name, and she will always be by the girl's side. And also the mistress can call another maid by pulling the bell if suddenly she is not there. The main character just looks down. The maid says that yesterday the lady did not clean herself up because she returned late. Therefore, she offers to do it now, but Chloe also does not answer anything and just gets off the bed. When Betsy sees the mistress's bare feet, she says that she will prepare shoes for her, and a little later the main character is already heading to the bath. But when she takes off her clothes, the maid sees a terrible picture of bruises on her body. Betsy, looking at them, thinks how terrible it is, and although there are not many scars, there are a lot of bruises. After all, after a while, the bruises will go away, but the scars will remain forever as a reminder of what happened. Therefore, the maid thinks whether this was done on purpose, but she does not understand how it is possible to calculate the force of the blow with such accuracy when beating a person. The maid thinks what a scumbag this man is, after which she points to the bath and says that the mistress can take it first. And her fatigue will quickly pass when the girl warms up, but the main character, looking at the bath, she feels very anxious. She remembers how someone screamed, who allowed the scoundrel to go into the neighboring house. The main character was grabbed by the hair and asked if she had left to seduce her neighbor. The girl said no, and she went to her aunt to borrow a sewing needle because hers was broken. But this voice only screamed that the girl knew how other men were staring at her, so she should not make excuses and beg for mercy. Now the maid tells her mistress that she will freeze if she stands for so long, so let her go to the bathroom. That the main character, looking at the bathroom, just shakes in horror. The water in it is like a dark pool, and the lady with dark hair begins to feel like her legs can no longer support her, so the girl falls into the water. The last thing she hears is the maid performing and screaming her mistress's name. The main character, with the last vestiges of her consciousness, thinks that no one understands her and no one believes her. Again, even she cannot believe herself. A short time later, the maid is in the blonde's office and says that she has news. The guy says he's listening. And the maid then claims that the lady slept well last night, but the girl was very scared when she knocked on the door, so something was clearly bothering her. Then they went to the bathroom, but there the maid saw that the mistress's entire body was covered in bruises. And surprisingly, there are practically no scars, and in the bath the lady lost consciousness. The blonde then asks in shock what she is talking about and how the girl could lose consciousness. But starting, she only answers that, and after the doctor's examination, she fell asleep again. The guy thinks that such a sudden change in situation is stressful for her, but perhaps there is another explanation for this, because the bruises are the work of that bastard. And she was probably intimidated so much that now the girl is afraid of the bath. Her previous owner treated her disgustingly, only because he was intoxicated by undeserved wealth. Now Ash asks if the girl is still sleeping, and the maid replies that, and after that the guy gets up from his seat and claims that he will check on Betsy. The blonde understands that now he will not mess with that freak. After all, Chloe must decide everything herself. Chloe is lying in her bed at this time, and the blonde approaches her. Looking at the young lady, the guy notices that she is very thin, so she should start eating and also need to think about the menu. Now the young man turns to Chloe, and when he does this again, the girl opens her eyes. The guy tells her that it's time to eat, because even beauties like her shouldn't sleep for so long. The brown-haired girl then looks at Ash, who with a smile on his face claims that her hair fell on her face. Then he asks if he should straighten her hair, but the girl only remains silent in response to this. And the blonde says that you need to say okay or I don't want to, because everything is not so complicated. And this is only her choice, thoughts and will. He will respect any decision of the young lady. So the blonde asks again if he should fix Chloe's hair. The girl thinks that permission means that she can completely control her body, and she really can do it. A short time later, the young lady is already sitting at the table. The girl silently looks at all the dishes in front of her. The blonde then looks at her. Then she claims that the new hairstyle suits the young lady and suggests that she start eating because Chloe needs to eat more. The girl thinks that the blonde is very strange and that by buying her the Marquis was able to get some benefit, after which she takes 1 spoonful of soup and brings it to her mouth. And Ash. Then he invites the girl to try dipping the bread into the soup because it's really tasty, but the main character does it, and she herself thinks that it's surprising because why do I let her do it so calmly? After which the young lady understands that Joseph will not show up there, and this is the Marquise's estate, therefore Joseph's status will not allow him. Now Chloe understands how aristocrats feel, so the girl decides to take a fork. But suddenly, her hand weakens, and the fork falls to the floor, after which silence hangs. The main character is very scared by this and then apologizes. The girl is already folding her tubes, begging for mercy, but the blonde man turns to her and asks if she dropped her fork. The girl, hearing the tone in which he says this, raises her gaze, and the guy looks at Ash in surprise and says that this happens to him too, after which he picks up the spoon from the table, and he throws it on the floor, claiming that sometimes this happens more than once. The main character still looks at him in surprise, and the guy claims that after 3 times it can no longer be called a mistake. But if a girl is tired or doesn't feel well, then this is understandable, so she should not apologize for this, because similar things happen to him. The guy then tells Alicia to bring clean utensils for him and Chloe, and the maid agrees. A short time later, she is already bringing clean utensils, and the blonde claims that Alicia is the main maid, and the young lady can tell her if there are problems with other servants. The maid says that she is glad to meet Madame and her name is Alicia. The girl wonders if they called her Madam, and the blonde then tells Chloe that first she needs to eat, and she can introduce herself later, and if the girl doesn't want to eat anymore, then she doesn't have to force herself because she is free to choose. The main character thinks that now she has freedom. A little while later, she eats the pie and thinks how delicious it is. And the blonde, looking at her, says that he wants to say something, and then claims that from now on Chloe is his legal wife. And he entered into a contract that has legal force, and to be more precise, the girl was not engaged to her ex-husband and is legally unmarried, but they have no idea what he can do, so the blonde offers to sort it out as soon as possible. After which he asks if everything is clear, and the main character answers that yes. Then Ash thanks her for her answer and says that perhaps she does not want to be his wife, but now the guy is unable to change anything. And now she is the wife of the Marquis Brinicles, and having married him, the girl became an aristocrat. The main character, hearing this, is a little surprised and even inspired, and the Marquis says that, alas, becoming his wife is not her decision, so he gives the young lady the right to independently choose what she would like to do next. After all, there are two options. And the first is that if she doesn't want anything, then it will be so. She doesn't have to go out into secular society and fulfill the duties of a wife. And also the girl is his wife, so good clothes, surroundings, and rumors are already due to her. The brown-haired girl then asks what option 2 is, and the blonde asks if it's really interesting, and then thanks the girl for asking. The main character thinks he is really strange, and the guy says that option 2 is more difficult. Now she will have to learn everything that the Marquis's wife needs to know, and the young lady will be provided with various teachers so that she does not overdo it. You will also need to attend social events and meet people and will no longer be able to sit at home. The girl thinks about all this, and the blonde then says that not everyone will be kind to her, and perhaps someone will want to use the girl for their own purposes or humiliate her because of her origin. Studying will also be difficult, and problems will arise that the girl will want to leave to the mercy of fate, but they will also have to be solved, so the young man asks what she will choose. The young lady, looking at the stamps, will think that both the first and second options are good, so Chloe wonders what he is thinking about, and she does not understand why Ash is so kind to her. However, the girl claims that she married him and therefore wants to take responsibility, but she doesn't want to worry about what she's not interested in, or choose between these options. This only makes the blonde smile more, and then says that I understand. And it turns out his wife is more greedy than he thought, but this is even good because she is the wife of the Marquis, so let him enjoy it. First, they need to invite all the teachers, and if one day the girl realizes that it is difficult for her, or that she cannot find a common language with the teachers, then they will correct it. The main character agrees, and this also makes the blonde smile. The girl then takes the fork in her hands and pulls another piece of dessert towards you, and when she eats, she thinks how delicious it is. For several days, Chloe was chained to the bed because she had no strength after the cruelty that she experienced. But after a while, everything returned to its previous course. The maid, looking at the gifts, told Madame to look, because today the Marquis needs to leave early, but he left gifts for Madame. After which the girl offers to open them, and the main character agrees. And the maid understands that the respectful tone in the girl's voice has disappeared, and she is most likely already feeling better. But Betsy was very scared when she saw how the girl was talking to her. She argued that you don't have to talk to rumors respectfully. Now the maid pulls the ribbon of one of the boxes and says that she prefers unpacking gifts because she is always excited. After which she takes the young lady a teddy bear out of the box and claims that it is beautiful and soft, so she invites the lady to hug it. When the main character does this, she thinks how nice it is, and you can hug the bear to yourself, and if you do this, it seems as if someone soft is hugging her, and this toy also has a cute face. Therefore, the girl thinks that she likes it. It reminds her of the bear that her parents gave her a long time ago. And even the ribbon on the neck is the same, as well as the left corner of the mouth is higher than the right. Therefore, the main character is surprised, and then he puts his hand behind the teddy bear's ear, thinking that if it's similar there, it will be very strange. But when the girl does this, she realizes that there is nothing there, and thinks that of course this is so. It can't be that same bear. After all, she secretly used that bear from her parents to exchange notes with the girl staying at their house, and it was their secret. The young lady's skirts fluttered as they ran, and they looked for ribbons for each other. It was the happiest time when they played together. Well, then the main character knew nothing about anything. And this bear is very similar to the little bear she had in childhood. And thanks to him, the young lady was able to remember such pleasant days, and that was enough for her. The maid, looking at the young lady, thinks that they said that this was a special order, and she thought that a huge diamond would be attached to this bear. But fortunately, the gentleman is very insightful, and the young lady liked it so much. A short time later, the maid asks the main character if she is having a hard time, and the girl replies that she is not, and everything is fine. Now, they are exploring the house, and the maid looks at her mistress for a little while, and then she notices something, and then he asks if Madame can see that far door, after which the fire personally states that the girl can visit any room except this one, and only the master can enter there, because this is a strict order. The housekeeper understands that the cleaning of these apartments is her responsibility. But the young lady doesn't have to talk about this because she can ask what's there. The girl who recently became a madam cannot enter one room, and the main character thinks that the maid is tense, and that means the Marquis really gave a strict order. The girl understands that this luxurious estate is absolutely necessary, but there is a room that is forbidden. The main character now says that of course she will remember, but she herself thinks that it's like a fairy tale about a Bluebeard. It took a whole day to explore the estate, and the young lady was told that there was a forest and a lake outside. But the territory of this mansion is so large that even on a map it would take an hour to get there. Entering her room, the main character thinks that she hasn't walked so much for a long time, and the girl realizes that she is now free, and everything feels different. Chloe thinks she's in a good mood, but then someone comes into the room and says that the young lady seems to like the gift. It turns out to be a blonde man. He claims that he is glad about this. The main character greets the Marquis and says that she was told that he left on business, and the guy says that first he needs to say hello and then greets Chloe, after which he says that he finished earlier than expected. Need something? Then let the girl just ask. Chloe says that's enough for her. Ash smiles in response to this, and then says that there are those who did not have a happy childhood and vice versa, but it seems Chloe was happier before. The girl is a little surprised by this, and then answers the Marquis that, and in her thoughts, she adds that she was really happy. The Marquis then turns to the young lady and says that if you remember his childhood only when he had a similar bear, he was the happiest child. The main character asks if his parents gave him this bear, and the guy says that no, and he was not given something like this to wear. He is a man, and all these are just memories. Chloe only repeats the word memory, and the blonde then asks if the young lady liked the estate. The girl says that, yes, it is very beautiful and majestic. The Marquis thanks her and says that it was nice there before, but fashion changes, and the interior of the house follows it. After which he asks Chloe when she will be ready to receive teachers, and the girl replies that tomorrow. The guy then says that in this case he will send an invitation right away. In the meantime, he suggests making a plan together so as not to overwork, and let the girl say right away if there is any teacher she doesn't like, because they can choose another one. The main character is a little nervous, and asks if she can first invite only female teachers. The guy asks why, and the girl says that she is scared. The young lady remembers how her past husband said that she herself made it all up, and now she judges everyone by this. The blonde only says with a smile on his face that then the female teachers will be invited first, and of course the young lady looks beautiful, even though he and the rest of the man's servants live here. The main character looks at the blonde with hope and thinks that she would say that everything is fine if it is him, or even if these men are his subordinates. But the young lady wonders where she has such faith, and Ash says with a smile on his face that everything is fine and she doesn't have to explain. Because the most important thing is that she feels great and everyone has different characters. And among men and women, there are both good and bad, so let the girl try to remember this. The main character then wonders who the Marquis is and whether he can be trusted. The day after the teacher arrived, the woman greeted the main character. She claimed to be Elowen Hasvid, believes that etiquette is very important, so if during training a young lady has questions, she can safely ask and also not be shy. The lady with blonde hair also greets the young lady and claims that she is Melissa Anton, and we will also be happy to teach the young lady because with the help of books, you can create a storm of emotions that she would like to share with her. Another girl with pink hair claimed that her name was Catherine Labtran, and although her father was only a viscount, she would like to make friends with the young lady. The girl understands that on the first day of training, they only introduced themselves and left. The maid claims that the Marquis is very scrupulous, And after all, Hasvid is a very famous countess, and Anton and Liberian are just viscountesses, but they are very famous in narrow circles, therefore, undoubtedly, the Marquis of Brinicle has nothing to regret. Then the maid turns to Madame and says that after training, when she finds herself in secular society, the teachers can become her support. The girl now understands that 3 years have passed since she last communicated with people. Her parents were representatives of the middle class, had their own business, and could not be called aristocrats, but they lived in abundance. The girl believed that she would be free forever until her parents were put into crippled sleep by bandits. Well, suddenly the maid turns to her mistress and asks her to look, after which he points to the dress and says that the Marquis sent her a lot of new things and thought that what was previously prepared was not enough. There are also suitable shoes and accessories there, so the maid offers to try them on. The main character in response to this is only silent for a little, and then agrees. And Betsy, with a smile on her face, says that she will help the lady with the clothes and then asks where they will start. And the main character then says that she wants to try on this yellow dress. And the maid, taking it in her hands, says that everything suits the young lady because the mistress's skin is so fair. The girl remembers how someone told her that Chloe had such fair skin that any color would suit her. When the maid dresses the main character in a dress, she says that it really fits her very nicely and that the Marquis has good taste. The main character only asks if the Marquis chose it, and the maid replies that yes. After which he invites the lady to look, because she has become even more beautiful than she was. The girl thinks that yes, that day too, everyone was smiling, both she and her parents. Before plunging into the eternal sleep of her mother, the girl put on a yellow dress, and her mother chose this dress for the last time. Ash was completely busy, so he returned in the morning, and the girl doesn't know the details, but it seems he will always be busy. When the guy wasn't particularly busy, he came several times a day. Well, one day Chloe got used to these visits, and sitting on the bed, thought that Ash was somehow strange. For the main character, men were always incomprehensible, and then she did not even suspect that they were taking advantage of her. However, now that the girl had gained freedom, she immediately realized how easily she could be manipulated. When the parents fell into eternal sleep, a neighboring couple who came to repay their debts said that their parents' business had gone bankrupt. And this meant that now Chloe would live in an orphanage taking care of other children. And while the girl was suffering at work, those spouses never took an interest in her life. One day the main character accidentally saw them from afar, and they were richer than last time. And the director constantly talked about how men treated women outside the shelter. She told the girl to be grateful that her director was a woman, because if it were a man, then the young lady would not have seemed a little. Therefore, Chloe, gripped by eternal fear, stopped going out, and instead, the girl began to do more and more dirty work. She was never thanked for her concern, and every time Chloe asked about money, she was told that keeping a young lady in a shelter was expensive. So no one paid her for her work, and the signed agreement prohibited her from leaving the territory near the shelter. Moreover, they made the main character a gray mouse and prohibited any decorations. The woman said that she was worried that the young lady was very beautiful and argued that attracting men was very dangerous. But each time the headmistress allowed herself to wear more extravagant clothes. Choosing the best clothes, she called Chloe and rejoiced like a child when she compared herself with her. And the worst thing happened when the child who was under the care of the girl fell ill. The shelter became poor, and Chloe had to be given to a sponsor, and the girl could only pray for the child's health. So she fell into the hands of Joseph, who was 15 years older. Remembering the past, Chloe saw more and more clearly the reason for what happened. She was an ill-mannered fool who made the wrong choice. But now someone speaks to the young lady, and the girl raises her head. It turns out to be a blonde man. He asks why the girl was so thoughtful and why she hid her head. The young lady replies that she didn't think about anything, and the Marquis says that if that's the case, then everything is fine. She also claims that she's wearing a purple dress today, and it suits her skin and eyes perfectly. The main character thanks him, and the guy replies that there's nothing, and it's not worth gratitude. After which he asks if the young lady liked the clothes he chose, because he was told that the girls liked this yellow dress. Chloe tells the Marquis that yes, and the blonde claims that in the future they could visit a clothing store together and not necessarily buy something, because you can just look to understand the taste of the young lady. It would also be great to remove the tags and bring in a designer. The guy also claims that she should not think that all this is necessary, because all this will happen if the girl wants it. And the main character is a little nervous and asks if she can do this. Ash says that, of course, his wife is also dear to him, and sometimes aristocrats can spend all the money they were given on a dress and accessories. And if anything, she can do that too. The girl is inspired by this and wonders if she can really do this without paying attention to anything. The blonde only asks if the young lady has any more questions, and the main character waves her head, indicating that she has no more questions left. The girl thinks why the Marquis has already bought her. She constantly thinks about this, however. In any case, she's afraid to find out the truth, and she cannot understand the reason for the fear. A short time later, the main character already meets with her etiquette teacher. She addresses the young lady, and when the main character responds with a simple sound, she states that remaining silent is the wrong choice. Well, it's better to express your opinion when necessary. After all, sometimes the silence of the Marquis can lead to some misunderstandings. The main character says what she will mean, and the teacher then asks if this is the first time she has attended such classes. The girl replies that yes, and Elowen then claims that she understood, and therefore from the next lesson they will move to a higher level, because she is sure that the young lady can handle it. And all the educational material that she took with her does not correspond to the level of the young lady, so she will start their next classes with a different curriculum. The main character thinks that she has been studying this since she was a child, but only now she realized that she still has a lot to learn. A little time later, the girl also meets with the teacher of the basic course in history lessons. The blonde asks how the young lady's class went, and the girl says that she liked everything. Melissa, in response to this, just smiles and says what a relief it is. Looking at the papers, she asks where the Marquise learned to write like that, because she is sure that in their days, many young aristocrats do not know Hariosh. Well, the girl knew how to use it. The main character understands that the Empire speaks only one language, but for writing, they use Aaron and Hario's complex letters, so they have to learn two languages at once. The teacher says that the young lady's parents took her education seriously, and she has very good ones, so the blonde asks the girl to let her know if the pace of training is inconvenient for her. After all, she is not smart enough to understand what a person is thinking about just by looking at the expression on his face. The blonde also asks if the young lady likes books, and the main character replies that she has loved them since childhood. The teacher then asks if this is true, because if she liked reading them so much when the girl was a child, then she will love them at a more mature age, because the books always remain unchanged, especially the library of the Marquis of Rinicles. She claims that it contains a huge number of valuable books, so the teacher asks if the girl has been there, and the main character answers that she has not. And the teacher, when she asks if they could dedicate it together if there is an opportunity, because in order for a girl to find her favorite book, she must first read it. Chloe says it sounds wonderful, and the teacher says it's true, and the books really are wonderful. The girl says that she is so pleased to look at the teacher when she sincerely likes something, and the woman with a smile on her face asks if it is really that noticeable. And the main character understands that her world is limited to a tiny place, and this little world gradually expands when she meets new people. A short time later, the main character is already dancing with the maid, and the teacher says that at this point you need to turn around. After the lesson, the dance teacher suggests we finish today and asks if the young lady liked it. The main game does not answer that yes, and the girl with pink hair says that this is wonderful, and since they still have a little time left, she offers to chat. After this, she turns to the Marquise and asks how she seduced the guy. But the impregnable Marquis is widely known among high society girls, and she must find out the secret method, so that if anything she could meet someone like him. Home. The heroine just doesn't understand what she's talking about, and when tea is served on the table, the main character says that there is no secret way. The girl with pink hair says that the young lady is very modest and also looks beautiful, and perhaps because of this, that she is so beautiful the Marquise could not resist. After which she asks when they will have the wedding. And the main character is a little surprised when I hear about this. She understands that she hasn't even thought about something like this. The maid looks at her mistress and then turns to the teacher and says that his lordship is gradually preparing for this. But the final date has not yet been set, so the Marquise cannot give a final answer. The teacher then says that it's clear, and that the Marquise seems to have a very calm character, and Madame always looks so serious. After which the girl with pink hair gets up and says that today on the street the girl was selling flowers, and she was wearing the required clothes. So Katerina felt sorry for her. A bouquet from her, because she knew that the Marquise would like it. But she herself likes these flowers, but the teacher has a lot of them at home, so she asks if she can give these flowers to the Marquise. The main character just silently looks at them and remembers her past, One day, when Joseph got drunk and beat her, he bought her a small, crude bunch of flowers as an apology. He said that it was very difficult now, and this was the reason for beating her. But this bouquet of flowers has nothing in common, and the main character says that she will happily accept it. A little time later, the teacher straightens her hair. Hey, she wonders what it was and why the girl had exactly the same look during class. But the rumors did not lie, and the girl is truly incredibly beautiful. But the girl with pink hair thinks that she is just a dummy, and yet the girl deliberately bothered her father in order to become the Marquise's teacher. In high society, when it comes to dancing or playing the piano, she has no equal, because for Katerina, it's as easy as shelling pears. But the girl feels as if she is working with an insensitive doll, and this Marquise is just an insignificant girl whose appearance does not match the Marquise. The girl with pink hair looks angrily and thinks that Chloe doesn't even know how beautiful Ash Rinnekel is. Over the entire 200 years of the existence of the Caton Empire, there were only 5 noble families. Among them, the Marquis of Rinnekel was one of the founders and a blood relative of the emperor's family. His position and opportunities were sky-high, and the Rinnekels did not even show their children to society until they became mature. Lee is the only one who was able to study everything necessary to inherit the title, and for the first time, she was able to enter high society at the planned age. After the Marquis couple fell into eternal sleep during an epidemic 10 years ago, Ash Rinnekel, who had already become an adult, said that he would receive the necessary education until he became an ideal candidate to inherit the title of Marquis. Aristocrats with daughters who reached marriageable age were envied by most people. You are those who have not yet reached marriageable age. Well, they still tried to marry them off. It was quite normal for the heads of families to try by any means to become his confidants, and one of them was simply obliged to know a high position. The girl with pink hair angrily says that the girl is good at dancing, even though today she had her first class, but it doesn't matter. And she even has a teacher, Rocket. But Katerina doubts that she can even write, and especially since she is a noble lady, so Love will be angry if she ignores him after he gives him a bouquet of flowers. In truth, this bouquet was bought on purpose, and the girl personally wrapped an armful of these flowers that she bought today from that girl in a bouquet. After all, it doesn't matter how beautiful the Marquise is. She is no different from that girl, and is just a stupid girl who doesn't understand how lucky she is, and she's certainly beautiful, but in all other respects, she's a complete non-entity. The girl thinks that she is also popular with men, and with such beauty, knowledge, and the background of her family, she is much better than this idiot. And after all, Ash Rinnekel is not like all other men. He does not pretend to be smart, but he also does not forget about the responsibility that his position carries. Therefore, the lady with pink hair thinks that it would be better if instead of the current Marquise, one became the Marquise. The girl is almost losing her mind and says that she will become the Marquise. Every day, the main character was busy with lessons, which she later repeated on her own in the evenings, and went by quickly. Here the girl met a lot more people than in the last 3 years, and she also had a vague idea that this was exactly the life she lived, and her past was not true. A little time later, the main character sits with a paper and studies. But then her eyes fall on the bouquet of flowers that the teacher with pink hair gave her, and the main character thinks whether she should put these flowers in a vase, because when the maid asked about this, the main character said that she should just leave them there. The girl thinks it's strange and doesn't understand why she feels uneasy when she sees them, but suddenly someone pulls the main character out of her thoughts, and the girl gets a little scared from this. It turns out to be a blonde man. He asks what the young lady was so thinking about that she didn't even notice how someone entered. Then she claims that the girl is an incredibly diligent student, and it's normal to skim from time to time. The main character says that she herself said that she wants to study, so there is simply no other way. The girl thinks that she is no longer embarrassed to talk to this man, and he is calm even if she is silent or stutters. The guy does not get angry and does not scold her, and also does not interrogate her. Now Chloe thinks that she will feel like a repeat if this person stops coming to her. The Marquis then looks at the flowers and asks who they are from, and the main character replies that Miss Catherine Leverian gave them to her. The Marquis asks why. The main character replies that she said that when she saw a girl selling flowers, she reminded her of her, so the teacher decided to give this bouquet to her. The prince then takes this bouquet in his hands and asks if the young lady likes this bouquet. And then they tell her not to respond based on the feelings or kindness of others, because the most important thing is whether she likes him. The main character then claims that she doesn't like them and brings back bad memories. Mark then asks if it could be that the girl herself sold flowers on the street in the past. The main character says no, it's simple, but the girl still can't finish because she's nervous. The guy claims that it is normal to tell only what she wants, and he wants to hear everything that the young lady wants to tell him. Chloe says that her last husband, she remembers that he bought her flowers every time he beat her. The Marquis then smiles coldly, and at the same second the bouquet flies out the window. After which the blonde shouts out the window that he threw out the trash, so he asks the servants to clean it up. After which he turns to the young lady and says that it doesn't matter how expensive or good a thing is, because if it evokes unpleasant memories, then it's bad. After which the blonde asks if Chloe was touched by her past husband, and the main character says that yes, and Ash asks if he often does this did. The girl says that she doesn't know because her memories are vague, and the guy beat her, put her to sleep, and then worked, and so it was repeated all at once. Ash claims that most likely the young lady cannot remember everything completely because she repeated it too often. After which he turns to Chloe and asks if this started as soon as the girl started living in that man's house. The main character says that, and it was from that moment that everything began. After this, the guy just sighs a little irritably, but the main character gulps and wonders if he's disappointed. And also whether the Marquis now despises her, and maybe she shouldn't have told about it. After all, if she had kept her mouth shut, then perhaps the outcome would have been different, and if that's the case. But the guy only turns to Chloe and apologizes for asking her about painful memories, but he knows so little about her. So there was no other choice, except how to ask the girl personally, and if the young lady wants to talk to him about something else, then don't be shy because it's normal if the words are messy or she can't find them at all. And even if the young lady wants to scream or spill for no reason, then that's the same, it will be fine. The blonde says he's sure Chloe is upset and depressed about her useless memories, but he is grateful that the young lady trusted him. The main character thinks that the Marquise's gaze looks sincere. Therefore, the girl claims that she was not upset because she was beaten because she deserved it. The blonde just looks at the young lady coldly and asks what she said. The girl replies that her past husband beat her because she could not curb her appetite, and if Chloe could restrain herself, then he would not beat her. The Marquis just clenches his fists and thinks how much the girl suffered. After which he turns to Chloe and asks why the guy beat her. The girl claims that he had many reasons. After all, she moved slowly and was indifferent when she squandered money from him to buy bread. And also because she suddenly fell asleep, although she had a lot of things to do, so only she is the cause of all her troubles. The girl understands that if she had not thought about it in this way, she simply would not have been able to bear it. The girl thinks that it was all her mistake and she was too stupid. And she thought so because she thought she could handle it all. But suddenly the blonde turns to her and says that if Joseph were a normal person, he would not have hit her because of something like this. And a girl wouldn't beat a child younger than herself for far-fetched reasons. The main character says no, but she really made a mistake but the guy interrupts her and says that what she did was not a mistake, especially since they were husband and wife, because people always make the biggest mistakes in everyday life. But usually they don't call these mistakes mistakes, and this man who beat her was trying to satisfy himself at her expense. The main character then looks at her interlocutor in shock and asks if she did anything wrong. The guy says no, and what the girl did was not wrong. And the girl thinks that, to be honest, it wasn't that she was in pain, but it was so painful that she wanted to never experience this feeling again. The young lady wanted to live happily, love and be loved as in ancient times, when she lived happily and carefree. The girl wanted to return to that time, and now she can no longer hold back her tears. Looking at the tears that are dripping onto the young lady's hands, the girl thinks that she has wanted to cry for so long. She wanted to run away from the man who was tormenting her as well. I wanted to be happy. The main character, looking at the guy, thinks whether he is crying because of her. The girl puts her hand on his cheek, and the blonde puts his hand on top of hers and speaks that Chloe can cry as much as she wants. A little later, one of the teachers says that thanks to her, the young lady has advanced, and many who study there do not do so with all their hearts, justifying it by this. Whether it is boring or the fact that they know absolutely everything in the world. But the young lady is a really diligent student, and given the current trends in etiquette lessons, there are many details that usually go unnoticed, so the teacher is extremely happy, even that the young lady is asking questions. The main character with a smile on her face says that everything is not so, and that the woman is a very good teacher. Elowen realizes that Chloe no longer stutters or fumbles when she speaks, and is able to answer questions normally. During the third lesson, Elowen suggested that the girl's inability to communicate was not caused by physical limitations. and this was a phenomenon caused by prolonged psychological abuse. The woman turns to the young lady and says that she looks much more beautiful when she smiles. And the main character then asks if this means that she will have to smile in the same way when she sees the world for the first time. The teacher says that there are people who show their charisma when they smile, but nevertheless, she thinks that it will be quite normal if the young lady wishes to do otherwise. But an indifferent facial expression can lead to people being wary or unable to understand what the girl is thinking about, so the young lady should be careful. The main character then says that she understood, and the woman then asks how old the marquise is. The girl replies that she is 25, and the teacher, looking at her, thinks that the young lady is not very sociable, but this is not because she is lazy or arrogant. And the girl is not trying to hide her personality with Putty, because she even has a compassionate heart hidden in her, and if she is as good a person as she seems to be. When she goes out into the world, the woman thinks that it will not be amiss to help her if necessary. Moreover, isn't the girl now her student? A little time later, the maid turns to her mistress and asks if she is still studying. But when she approaches the sofa, she sees that the main character has fallen asleep and understands that even in their sleep, beautiful people remain beautiful. Betsy thinks she's glad she prepared a big pillow. And although the girl has faced such difficulties, she is not evil towards others. And Chloe is still awkward around her, but the girl is trying to treat her well. The retailer thinks of her madam as a cutie, but she thinks that in any case, she needs to move it to another place. But the maid does not understand how to do this because she cannot move it herself. The girl understands that she cannot do anything about it, so she will have to quickly wake up the mistress. But suddenly, someone interrupts her and says that he will do it. The maid is a little surprised by this, and when she turns around, she sees the gentleman there and turns to him, but the guy only shows her to be quiet. After which he approaches the main character and takes her in his arms, and the main character opens her eyes from this. But the blonde tells Chloe to sleep a little more, and the girl closes her eyes again. The guy understands that at first he was happy just from the thought of bringing her to this place. And it's not so easy to find someone who can find a deliberately hidden person, especially considering that he himself has a lot of things to do. But thanks to a clue they barely found, he was waiting for her at that bar. And when the old bar door opened, and he saw the young lady coming inside, then the Marquis froze and could not even breathe because of the poor treatment. Her pale skin looked terrible. And some of the brats immediately raised a fuss in the face of her husband and put her up for auction. Therefore, all the Marquis wanted was to strangle that insignificant man and take the girl to himself. And if only he had found the young lady a little earlier, if only he had become a Marquis a little earlier, then he wouldn't have to see her in this state. So when the guy got up, he offered such a round sum. Now that he can see that smile again, and now that the young lady can smile just like she did that time, then he decides that he will definitely help her. The guy remembers how the main character, when she was little, sat while her parents read a book. Then someone with long blonde hair came into the room, and they played with their main character together. A little time later, when the teacher and Chloe are already in the library, she says that she admires this library every time. Today's lesson will be about finding a book that will suit a young lady's tastes, and the teacher says that there is something from every genre, so there is no more ideal place. But then, looking at the main character a little, she clears her throat and asks Madame to forgive. Then he claims that she has to confess something to her. The main character says that she is listening, and the woman then asks if the girl is too calm and asks her to at least make a surprised face. The main character says that Miss Melissa is a passionate and sincere teacher who loves to chat, so she does not think that her confession will be anything terrible. The woman says that Madame really mastered her speech better and then asks if it's all thanks to her teachings. The main character says that yes, and this is exactly why the woman smiles. After which he claims that, in truth, About Mana is one of those who are good at teaching, and the responsibility for someone's learning is high. And above all, it's a job that you have to love. The woman says that she says it would be better to read books than to teach someone, and it is better to study alone. But she could not refuse, because the conditions that his lordship offered were too good. The main character asks if he gave the teacher a library card. The woman answers that something like Togo. The blonde says that he said that he would show a place that is hidden from people, and she wrote a dissertation on this. His lordship's personal documents helped a lot. And since we're talking about this, the teacher continues to talk about the main character, just looking at her and smiling. The girl now understands how someone enjoys their hobby, and the woman looks very happy, so she seems to really enjoy chatting about this topic. But the girl says that in any case, it's wonderful that the teacher is writing a dissertation. After all, it is interesting to study someone's main specialty. The woman says that Madam is also doing better than before, and at first she did not speak much. So she thought that the young lady did not want to study with her, and the marquise was simply more withdrawn than usual. The girl's gaze then falls on the shelf with books and notices an assembly of books there called A Girl with a Yellow Ribbon. The main character approaches her and thinks that you are a series of books about a girl growing up who especially loved ribbons. This story is about love and friendship, and she really liked it in the past. The woman then turns to her lady and says that she must like this book. She liked it too, and when she was a child, she read it many times. The teacher says that she cried her eyes out when she read the last 14 volumes. The main character says that she only got to chapter 5, and she herself thinks that every time a new girl with a yellow ribbon came out, she ran to the bookstore because she personally wanted to buy it and had read volume 4 for so long that she even forgot. There was an unpredictable man who was the girl's opponent with a yellow ribbon and did not understand anything. It was as if the villain in the book knew more than the villain in the real world. The teacher says that then she will keep the plot a secret. After all, every time you turn the page, it's so fun to anticipate what will happen next. He tells the main character that everything is correct, and the woman then asks if this means that this is a book that the girl wants to read today. Chloe replies that yes, but she herself thinks that maybe it's just a book, but she's glad that she was able to find another valuable memory from the past. The main character thinks it was fun to read this book after being away for so long. The maid approached her and asked if Madame was still resting, and the main character said that she only wanted to finish reading. But now the girl realizes that she ended up reading until late at night and fell asleep. Betsy said she should rest some more, but the young lady had other things to do. And today's activity is an activity that she dislikes a little. The lady with pink hair told her that Madame was not used to horses, and horses are sensitive animals, so if they smell her fear, it can be dangerous. Chloe thought that in these classes, she should learn how to ride a horse, play the piano, and dance. Fortunately, she has studied all this to some extent, so the girl does not lack knowledge. But even after all this time, they still did not start horse riding, so the girl claimed that she was not afraid of horses. However, the girl only put her hand on her shoulder and said that she shouldn't lie when it comes to dangerous things. Because, of course, this is her first time, so she understands that the young lady wants to try everything at once, but she doesn't want to put Madame in danger. And Madame is no longer a child who will take risks out of curiosity. The main character thinks that she even liked such a relationship. And later, Catherine will believe how safe the horse is for her. And after classes, she will try it on the hippodrome. And all this happens because his lordship gave her mentor some freedom of action on the territory of the mansion. Being near the horse, and the lady with pink hair says that his lordship is worthy of praise, and she did not know that the land was so huge, at least 1,000 acres. Katerina then remembers something and says that most likely the girl does not know this unit of measurement, so she asks for forgiveness for her rudeness. After which the young lady thinks about how to explain this and says that the torturer imagined that the village where the common people lived had been demolished. After all, she understands what a huge territory this is. Again, the girl herself lived in a similar village. The main character thinks that the funny thing is that she would never have talked about it if Betty or the other maids were around. At the same time, she always tries to refer to things in which she is strong, pretending to be the most elegant lady in the world, and the main character thinks that she will most likely never know if she came there to be her teacher and lie down to watch her engagement from the side. Catherine only asks if the girl could tell her when his lordship will go for a walk, since there is a lot that she, as a teacher, must teach the young lady. And if everything is so dangerous, then maybe the young lady should just sit on the sidelines and watch everything that happens, because all she can do is show her how to drive correctly. The main character thinks that she is not sure that the piano and dance lessons were of good quality. After all, her piano lessons ended at the initial stage, as if the knowledge of this girl, limited to this level only. The lady with pink hair at this time approaches the main character and greets her. Catherine turns to the young lady and says that she looks so tired today, after which he asks if she slept well, and the main character says that yesterday she fell asleep while reading a book. The teacher says that those who have seen the books before read them without problems, and even if the young lady is not used to this, then she should not read until late at night, and she should take care of her pretty face, which captivated his lordship, after which the teacher also asks what the girl was reading, and the main character says that in the series of books, there is a girl with a yellow ribbon. The lady with pink hair just smiles in response to this, and then turns to the main character and says that this book is intended for children. And of course, it's interesting to read, but how does the Marquise need to strive for a higher level? After all, commoners and nobles are two different worlds in their lives. They must be given to others according to their authority and capabilities. And to do this, a girl must treat herself as strictly as possible, and also learn to do this, because she can no longer think the same way before. The main character thinks that this girl keeps crossing the line more and more, but she doesn't want to say anything, especially since Ash chose her. The teacher keeps laughing, and then says that maybe she came there to teach the young lady shit about the piano and dance, but she doesn't think it's right for me to tell her about this for her own well-being. After which she takes Madame's hands in hers, and says that she thinks this is much more important than today's lesson, and asks Madame to listen carefully. After all, if she does not know anything because of her humble origins, then the young lady is better off following someone she knows well, because even though she is a little, she knows more and is more prepared for life in society than she is, so it would be nice if the girl followed her advice. The pink-haired lady thinks that of course it doesn't matter who the young lady was before, but now she has become a marquise, and the other nobles would chicken out. But during all this time, the main character did not react in any way, and she is just such a woman, so the lady with pink hair asks if the girl can read letters. After all, if not, then should she help the marquise a little? After all, she cannot tell Lady Melissa that her classes are too difficult. The lady with tied hair admits that the language of empire is complex, and since the marquise can't do it, no matter how much effort she puts in, the teacher will be happy to help her, and it would be nice to start with books with fairy tales and pictures. The teacher asks if she should recommend a couple of good books for her lady, and the main character only remains silent in response to this. And the lady with pink hair can no longer contain her smiles, thinking that one has only to look at this facial expression, which suggests that the girl did not even understand how she was insulted. But the main character continues to look silently at the young lady, and she clenches her fists at this moment. But suddenly, at this time, someone else comes into the room and claims that Count Lavrian said that his daughter is a skilled teacher, so he listened to his recommendations, and as expected, the young lady's talent for teaching is simply incredible. The main character is a little surprised because this voice is so familiar, and when the girl turns around, she sees Ash there. The lady with pink hair is very scared by this, and clenching his fists, he thinks how long the guy stood there and he couldn't hear anything. The teacher smiles and says that his lordship flatters her, and the girl cannot believe that he personally came to see how she conducts her classes. The lady with pink hair claims that if she knew, she would have prepared much better, and she thinks that as far as she knows, the Marquis has never attended or shown interest in other classes. But nevertheless, he came to her and even paid her a compliment, and this is at least an excellent chance to leave a good impression of himself. Well, then the girl freezes for a moment and thinks that perhaps the guy came there on purpose to see her, because unlike the Marquise, she is an idiot who cannot even express her own opinion, and all he does is shine his pretty face everywhere. She is Catherine Lavrian, a lady who is much smarter and knows how to behave in society. Therefore, she can bet that Mars likes it. The girl thinks what to do, because she also likes his lordship, and the young lady does not understand how to tell her that their feelings are mutual. Then he just bows his head, and the teacher notices this and thinks what he wants to do. But the guy only coldly claims that the girl was honored to teach his wife, but judging by the fact that her method of teaching that the young lady chose was belittling, so it seems that she thought that she was above the Marquise. Catherine, shocked by this, begins to shake a little and thinks that the Marquis heard absolutely everything. The girl begs his lordship to forgive her because she was too eccentric and therefore made a mistake, and she did not want to offend him, so she asks for mercy and understanding. The blonde just smiles and says that this is quite strange because he is not the one to whom the girl should apologize, and she needs to ask his dear wife for forgiveness. The lady with pink hair is shocked by this and thinks that she doesn't know who the emotionless person in front of her is. After all, the Marquis Vrinicles, whom she knows, has always been kind, and he has always been warm like sunlight. The girl didn't even know he had such a side. The lady with pink hair thinks she didn't do anything wrong. Therefore, she does not understand why she bows her head to this beggar woman. But now, clenching her fists, she still decides to bow, and asks her ladyship and forgiveness for her carelessness. The teacher claims that she crossed the line and lost her composure, so she asks to forgive her. The blonde then asks Chloe with a smile on his face what they will do. And should this girl be forgiven? The lady with pink hair purses her lips, and he thinks why the Marquis spoke to her in a different tone. But with this girl he behaves differently, And if the guy understands that the young lady has complete emptiness both in her heart and in her head, then he will soon get tired of her. And soon, the Marquis will get tired of her heartlessness and will also regret his decision, because this woman is no smarter than a dog, and most likely she will believe in the sincerity of her intentions and will also forgive, so you just have to wait. But at this moment, the main character turns to her teacher and asks why she should forgive her, and the girl is shocked by this and thinks who the Marquise thinks she is. To ask this when she, bowing her head, begs for her forgiveness on her knees. The lady with pink hair says that this is because she asked the young lady to forgive her, and she herself thinks that under other circumstances, she would have kicked this brown-haired girl while silently begging for forgiveness. The main character then asks what the teacher did wrong, and the girl with pink hair is then in a stupor and repeats the question again. But then she wonders whether this idiot even understands that these were insults all along, and whether this means that nothing has reached her yet. After which Catherine smiles and thinks that if she plays on the Marquis's feelings, she might be able to get away with it. The guy at this time only watches all this with a confident smile. And the teacher thinks that you just need to behave like an idiot with the Marquise. The girl can say that the teacher did not do anything wrong, and she tried for the good. So now the lady with pink hair says, what if she did something wrong? Who was simply worried about the Marquise, so she explained everything to her gradually. But the main character then claims that the teacher mocked her and ignored her. And this is also not the first time this has happened, because in all previous classes, the teacher spoke to her in a similar tone. The lady with pink hair is shocked by this and, biting her lips, wonders if the girl knew about this all along. And the main character then claims that as soon as someone appeared whose influence was greater than the teacher, then she most likely could not say that the girl apologized to her and sincerely asked. The lady with pink hair thinks that she was sure that the Marchioness was an idiot, so she didn't pay attention to what she might think. So now the teacher screams that everything is wrong, and she was really worried about her ladyship. After all, this happens all the time in society, and she did it to help the young lady gain experience. The main character then asks if the teacher decided to show the bad side of herself in order to show her what society is capable of. The girl replies that, yes, all this was only for the sake of her ladyship, and she understands what the teacher means because it's all true. The main character is only silent for a little, and then says that it was the teacher's fault, or that she looked down on her and also felt superior to her. And the most important thing is that the teacher is still not sorry for her behavior. The lady with pink hair screams that this is not true, and she is really sorry. And the main character turns around and says that she never saw it. Passing by her husband, she addresses him by name, and the guy responds. The lady with pink hair just clenches her fists and is furious, and thinks that the Marquise will say that she forgives her. But the main character decides not to do this, and claims that she does not want to forgive this person. After all, if she had forgiven her so easily, the teacher would have thought that she could again behave with her the way she wanted. The lady with pink hair thinks that now she understands why the girl was looking for an opportunity, and now she turns to the Marquise and says that she cannot treat a person like that, and for just one mistake. And the main character then turns around and says that this is not the first time, and the girl constantly ignored her. The teacher claims that she regrets this, and that she really did it for her ladyship's sake. The main character then just approaches the piano and says that Clarathea, Volume 1, is a book about music for children, which she read when the young lady was 8 years old. But the girl still wanted her to play the piano as written in this book, so she asks, doesn't the young lady have any other textbooks besides this one? The lady with pink hair claims that she wanted the Marquise to learn to play just perfectly before she moved on. And the main character claims that, as far as she knows, after this there are 5 more books of Clarathea. And after that, so that they proceed to Namun in order to increase the village of fingers, they would practice sonatina for technique. By this time, most would have already finished the first book of Clarathea, but they haven't even gone through 10 chapters. Therefore, the main character asks if the teacher wanted to finish the first half of the score of the first part of Clarathea, and didn't she tell her to practice at home 100 times? After all, if this is not so, maybe the lady herself doesn't know how to play anything beyond Volume 1. So the girl asks if the teacher did this because she doesn't have the confidence to teach her further. This only makes the girl blush. And the Marquise then claims that this is exactly how the lady spoke to her, and she also did this for her own well-being, and the lady with pink hair will forgive her. The blonde grins a little at this, and the lady with pink hair is wary of this. The Marquis claims that it was the laugh of a yard dog, and maybe even the laughter of a dog is a luxury for her. After which the young man asks, wasn't the girl just being a rude lady again? He claims that he would like to hear more about everything, but now he only thinks about one thing, and it is obvious that the teacher now behaved very rudely. The lady with pink hair claims it was a misunderstanding, and the blonde man claims that whether it was a misunderstanding or not is up to him to decide, and if he does not consider what happened to be a misunderstanding, then it is not a misunderstanding. After which the guy tells the young lady to tell her father that he thinks he will have to discuss the Altrin deal with another family, and let the young lady just let him know about it. Catherine wonders what's going on, and the Marquis then turns to her again and says that if her father asks for a reason, then let the girl say that it is because she showed disrespect to the Marquise, and he will immediately understand everything if the young lady says that today she was fired from her position as a private teacher. The pink-haired lady then screams that they have no right to insult her, but after these words, the blonde only looks at the girl with disgust, which makes her scared. And the Marquis then claims that the young lady insulted the Marchioness Chloe Vrinicles. But they value the honor of the Marquise, and it seems to him that the girl insulted this honor with her behavior. The lady with pink hair only gets more nervous and thinks that she just decided to put this simpleton in her place, and the guy is too cruel. The Marquis claims that for now he is still in control, and it would be better for the young lady to leave this room. After all, if she does something similar again in the future, then everything will not end with one warning. Then the young lady's legs stop holding her, and she, lying on the floor, asks her ladyship to forgive her. She begs the Marquise to ask her because she is too young and therefore naive, and also could not restrain herself. The blonde just looks at her coldly and tells her to throw the girl out of there, after which one of the servants grabs the girl. The young lady cries out to his lordship to forgive her, but the servants only walk out the door. When the girl leaves the room, the main character looks at her shaking hands and realizes that 10 years have passed, and it's been a long time since she expressed her opinion so clearly and firmly. At this time, the blonde takes her hands in his, and the main character, looking at him, thanks him for his help. Yesh says that it's not worth it, and the girl can't even imagine how happy he was when she answered that teacher so bravely, and the young lady can continue to say what she wants. Chloe, looking at him, is a little silent, and she herself thinks that compared to the way he treats other people with her, he becomes a completely different person. The guy says that in the future, the young lady will meet similar people, and he is sure that there will be many of them. There are those who don't know what they are talking about, and those who ridicule others excessively, as well as those who make things that do not belong to them their own. And there are even people who just like to ruin everything for others for no known reason. And for such people, kind Chloe will look like an easy prey. It's a shame, but this is the reality. The guy claims that he is afraid that as long as the girl is in this world, she will have to deal with such people. The main character says that what she went through, and she herself remembers how, after her parents plunged into eternal sleep, their friends came and said that she could take care of herself. Without any connections with the outside world, the manager of the orphanage allocated her a room and shoved all the work onto her and paid her nothing. The young lady was foolishly naive and was forced into marriage with Joseph. Feeling that freedom has been granted and is now becoming less and less, isn't this the real fear of any person? The girl claims that of course everything was different, but practically nothing has changed. However, before that, it was much worse, and she couldn't even say anything because all these people didn't listen to a single word she said. The young lady claims that she likes the current situation much better, and although Lady Catherine does not admit her guilt and does not think that she will regret it in the future, at first she even wanted to accept her apology. The main character turns to his lordship and asks how often he has experienced this. The guy just smiles lightly and then claims that it is so. Chloe then approaches his lordship and asks if he is okay. And isn't it painful for the guy? The guy is a little surprised at these words, and then says with a smile that the young lady is very nice. And after everything she's been through, the girl still tries to take care of others. The main character in response to this only smiles and says that this is all, because Yesh saved her despite his condition. He condescended to her and saved her, and he's always been so kind to her, so she doesn't want the guy to get hurt. Baby's smile on his face says that the young lady is indeed very kind, and it seems he underestimated the amount of kindness that she possesses. After which the young man lets go of the main character's hands and turns to her, after which he asks whether the girl would hug him if he said that he was in pain. Chloe is a little shocked by this, and Marquis says that if she doesn't want to, then don't. The main character is silent for a while and looks the guy in the eyes. The girl understands that no one except Joseph has ever hugged her, but his hands were very rough, like a pressing wall, and sometimes the thought of those times makes her feel bad. But nevertheless, she doesn't like it, but it's not disgusting either. Here the guy always thinks about her and asks if the young lady is okay, so the main character holds out her hands. And she thinks that he is not like her last husband, so she is not afraid of him. But the guy hugged her to calm down, but it looks like she's the one being calmed down there. The young man claims that the warmth of the human body is very calming, and the main character wonders what kind of feeling this is. After all, this is not a feeling of tension, but something more calming. This is something warm and indescribable. Chloe cannot leave the thoughts of what kind of feeling this is. The young man pulls the young lady closer to him and says that a little more. With a smile on his face, hugging the girl, he thinks that there have been many cases when kind and friendly people, having survived bad sunrises, radically changed for the worse, but it doesn't seem like she has changed much. After all, Chloe, who said these words, does not know what she was trying to express. Now, sitting in his office, the Marquis thinks that her emotionless face seemed to glow a little, and her barely noticeable smile is capable of changing people just like before. Putting down one of the documents, the guy leans back in his chair and thinks that although these feelings seem to be forgotten, but the Chloe he knew a long time ago was still hidden inside and being neglected and constantly tortured physically, as well as mentally, must have taken a very heavy toll on him. Well, even so, he is a person who is already accustomed to pain more than others, and would suffer even worse than from loneliness. The guy closes his eyes and thinks, how can a girl with such a kind heart endure all this cruelty? And in this world, people will not leave the goddess alone. When he found out that the young lady was married, he decided that if she was happy, he would not even try to win her heart, and he could help her from the shadows, but this decision was useless. After all, in her marriage, it wasn't even about happiness, because the young lady's previous husband didn't even consider her a person. The Marquis wanted to get rid of all the people who were responsible for her misfortune, but first, he had to give Chloe a choice. The guy understands that the people who did this to her can sincerely ask her for forgiveness, and perhaps by forgiving them, the girl will find peace of mind. The Marquis, of course, does not think that this will happen, so he postponed this coincidence of circumstances for later. But nevertheless, this is an isolated case when he turns a blind eye to something like this, and if Chloe comes to him again and asks him to get rid of someone, the guy will no doubt do it with all his cruelty, and no matter how long it takes. After all, no matter what, he will love her all his life. At this time, Chloe's past husband is looking at one bottle and wondering if he has already drunk it. The guy understands that a couple of days ago, he was glad that he sold his stupid anal wife and got a lot of money, but now there are only a couple of coins left, and money comes and goes easily. As soon as Joseph received the money, he bought a big house and began betting big and gambling. At first, he won a lot of money, but that was all. But since then, the money began to disappear at breakneck speed. The guy thought he had luck by the tail when he got a whole mountain out of a couple of coins, and in the end, he lost them all, and yet he is even on the verge of putting his new house as collateral. Joseph's new wife just puts her hand on his shoulder and addresses him like a baby. The woman claims that he knows that she cannot live like this, and her baby can easily give her more because she knows that her baby is the best. Joseph thinks that this woman does nothing but beg from him, and if only this woman in front of him was Chloe. After all, even though the house was old, it was always clean. The girl was always neat. The guy just irritably asks if he can conjure this money, and the brunette asks what the kid is talking about because she doesn't understand at all what he means. Then he whispers for the baby to say that he loves her, his Camilla. The guy then grabs the girl and kisses her, letting her go and asking if she is happy. It is expected that he gave her something better than words, so let her tell it already. The woman says okay, and about that guy who bought his ex, that guy wasn't just someone worth a wallet. And it looks like it was a noble aristocrat, because recently there was a rumor in high society. Joseph, a little excited, asks what it's about, and the woman answers that it's about a famous noble family, because it says out loud that the wife became a commoner of the day, "We pledge beauty." And even the emperors themselves approved of the marriage, and maybe because they had not yet set an exact wedding date. Although there are rumors about this too, it's not clear what to believe. But all we know is that she is a brown-haired woman with curly hair and mysterious violet eyes. This makes Joseph a little tense, and the woman asks whether this girl and the rumors reminded the guy of his ex. Joseph is a little silent in response to this, and thinks that this emotionless woman now belongs to a famous family, but he wanted Chloe to suffer and sold her to amuse himself. Joseph wanted her to be completely finished off, and she would miss him so much and suffer even more. The woman claims that the child's ex, not the man who bought her, nor she would like her past to become known to everyone. Therefore, the brunette asks if Joseph thinks that they can hit a big jackpot. The guy thinks that Chloe was the one who sobbed at his feet, asking for forgiveness for her misdeeds. When he was playing with her, he felt a certain superiority that filled him. The guy was older than Chloe, without education and tired of life. That's why he beat the young lady even harder, because she was luckier than him. And besides, this became a good reason for her suffering. Because of that incident, his inferiority complex only intensified. And the worst thing is to think that you are disappointed in yourself. She presses her fists and thinks whether this girl dares to join a noble family. The guy sold her to make the young lady feel guilty and wonder if she thinks she is better than she was. After all, this is the very woman who should be lower than him. The guy understands that he will draw a fortune if he stirs up a scandal among the average common people and this arrogant nobility. Then they will have no choice, except how to kick Chloe out, because such pure-blooded aristocrats don't like it when their pure blood is mixed with the mob. Now that Joseph thought about it, it was Camilla who beat him to the idea of selling Chloe, and so he would have a lot of money. The guy understands that this time everything will also work out as it should, so he says that it's good, and he needs Camilla to find out who has Chloe on her neck now. The guy thinks that he will humiliate the young lady in front of everyone, and to think that she could climb so high. But if after that it falls to the very bottom, it will finally break. The main character is sitting in her room at this time, and the maid helps her steal her hair, and claims that in just a little while, the girl will be able to go to a tea party. The madam was planned to be presented as a marquise at a larger ball, but first, the owner decided to organize a small tea party so that the madam could get acquainted with such events. The main character says that she heard, and she appreciates that the marquis cares about her so much. The girl thinks that it is too early for her to appear before the general public, and most likely, most people she meets will despise her, because she is a commoner turned marquise. But suddenly the girl realizes something. After all, she had just finally accepted that she had become a marquise, and it's all thanks to Ash. The main character, thinking about this, cannot help but smile and whispers to me that they are newlyweds. The maid then turns to Madame and asks if she said something, because she overheard. Chloe is a little wary of this, and then a little embarrassedly says that it's nothing. At this time, the father of the girl with pink hair throws the papers and, screaming, asks if she even knows what she was doing. The young lady claims that she didn't do anything wrong and just wanted to teach the arrogant girl a lesson. But how dare she do that, because it's not fair. The young lady's father, Zhenya, says that although the girl was a commoner, now she has become a marquise, and Catherine must understand that this marriage was concluded and approved by the emperor. Therefore, the girl's position is superior, and yet he told his daughter to teach the girl as befits a teacher and not to make her angry. The lady with pink hair just reiterates that she didn't do anything wrong. The father just hits the table and screams that if the girl says that it is the marquis who is wrong, then it is definitely her fault. After all, the marquis remembered her every word, and after the father talked with the lawyer, he asked him what he wanted to be punished for humiliation, or for breaking the trade deal. So the father asks if the girl understands how important this deal is to them. But he thought that Catherine would get closer to the Marchioness, and this would greatly benefit his business. But the girl came and arranged it, so now it's all over. The lady with pink hair just tisks displeasedly and asks why she has to be friendly with her, since this girl is just a thick-headed commoner. And the father claims that because she is a marquise, and everything that his daughter said was regarded as a humiliation of the marquise's family. And moreover, Catherine failed to cope with the role of a teacher and did not teach the young lady how to behave in society. Therefore, maybe she at least admits her guilt, but the girl only screams in surprise. How can her father protect her, and you still say that his daughter is wrong? The father claims that he is not protecting anyone and just wants to point out to her nalady her mistakes, and Catherine should wake up because she cannot even imagine how difficult it was for a simple viscount to move to the capital. He worked day and night so that his family could stand firmly on its feet. But his daughter. In addition, I also asked the marquise about meetings with the marquis, so my father asks if this is true. The girl is then a little silent and wary, after which she claims that she just wanted to chat with him once, and she also asks if the young lady told her father about this, and if this is all that the girl is capable of. The father only screams that his young and naive child cannot yet be in secular society, and instead he will sit at home and relearn how to behave correctly. After all, the marquis said that if this happens again, he will terminate all their contracts concluded in the capital. Therefore, The father claims that he is ready to do anything just to maintain his position, and otherwise, in order not to go completely bankrupt, he will have to sell all the young lady's dresses and valuable jewelry. The lady with pink hair then just leaves the room and slams the door behind her. The father sighs and thinks what's wrong with her. Viscount Levilan is a man who lived in a small provincial town, and with his talent, he made his way to the capital with great success. The man understands that the plan to place Catherine closer to the Marquis so that they can become closer and become good friends is still possible, but in the documents sent by the Marquis, there is a detailed account of everything that Catherine did and said to the Marquis, and sometimes she even tried to find out the whereabouts of the Marquis, and even worse, she asked the Marquis to meet with the Marquis. The father realizes that he can no longer read this. After all, despite the fact that the girl knew what the Marquis was capable of, she behaved so lowly, therefore, most likely, because while she was with the Marquis, she was not aware of her actions. The father understands that because he made a decent fortune, he spoiled the girl too much, and it was because of his excessive carelessness that she became so arrogant. The lady with pink hair at this time runs to her room and thinks who dared to tell her father all this if the girl cannot tolerate such a trifle. This means the distance between her and the Marquis will soon begin to increase. The lady with pink hair thinks isn't it all the Marquis's fault, because if she did everything as she should, she wouldn't say anything to the girl. Katerina once again thinks that it's all the fault of the stupid, ragged Marquise. Therefore, she must take revenge on her at any cost. The main character is sitting in her room at this time. She wonders whether she and the Marquis will love each other when they get married. But in a noble family, there are serious demands on the future heir, so the young lady wonders whether it is normal for her to be an aristocrat of low birth and whether her child will be treated as a bastard. But the most important thing is whether she can even decide on this, because for a young lady, a relationship is a thing that can only be more fearful, and these unpleasant memories still cannot leave her. But the girl thinks that nevertheless she felt calm then with Ash. Therefore, the girl thinks who knows, maybe they can live happily ever after. Vrinnicly, during her lessons on the history of the Empire, of course, not very much, but still, the maid tells her ladyship that she is finished, and the lady looks absolutely gorgeous. The main character claims that this is all thanks to the efforts of Betsy. After that, she gets up from the chair and goes somewhere, and the maid asks where her ladyship is going. The girl says that she is going to the library, and the maid then claims that among the nobility, it is hardly possible to find such a diligent student as the mistress. Along the way, the young lady meets servants who greet her, and when the girl comes to the library, she looks for the book she needs. Opening this book, the girl thinks that the history of the Vrinicle family is much more than she expected. Chloe thinks a little and realizes that she is the Marquise Vrinicle, but a little later, the girl realizes that she has been sitting a little too long and asks if it's time. The girl understands that she must go to her place and read the books that are left. Maid Heat says she will carry them. A short time later, the main character is already walking through the garden and thinks that it looks like a small town. The young lady understands that this family dates back to the very beginning of the country. The family was created by the younger brother of the first emperor, so all family members have royal blood. The girl realizes that this mouth is bigger than she thought, and then she claims that she read in books that this is a place with a rich history. The maid is not a lady to say that everything is true, and the Marquis is kind to hardworking people, so there are many who would like to work for him. Throughout the life of the Marquis, many talented people worked with him, and one of them was even invited by the emperor, and this continues to this day. Personal maid Alicia was invited to work in the palace and was even allowed to keep her previous position, but the Marquise was so good that she declined the invitation, saying that she loved her current job too much. The main character claims that according to what she read, the Vriniklov family is related to the royal family, and only members of the younger nobility worked for the royal family, so the girl asks if everything is the same. The maid tells Milady that no, and she is just a commoner, because in their days, everyone who works in this estate except a few people are commoners. In the past, instead of ordinary maids, junior nobility or people loyal to the Marquis were usually appointed to the position of Vrinikla's butler, so the girl asks how long ago this has changed. The blonde replies that no, and now the Marquis occasionally greets them when he meets them. The main character thinks whether it is possible that from the moment he proposed to her, he treated her as his future wife, but she knew that he was an unusual person. The maid says that it is worth noting that most of the court officials are aristocrats, and among them there are also those who were accepted into the service of commoners and later became nobles. The main character then turns around and looks at her new home. But after that, she notices one of the windows and thinks that this is the room she promised not to enter. The girl looks a little silently at the window, but then someone comes up behind them and says that he has finally found Chloe. It turns out to be Ash. He claims that he heard the young lady go to the library, but asks why she is here now. The main character says that he came so early, and she thinks that even though they have dinner together and communicate as often as they can, the guy is almost always busy, so meeting him in the morning is a rarity. And on the day when Catherine came, he even returned home early. So I wonder if Ash returned by chance at the moment when Catherine was teaching her. The blonde turns to Chloe and claims that he wants to tell her something. And of course, he missed her too, so he extended his hand and invited the young lady to take a walk. The main character takes his hand and agrees. A short time later, the two of them are already walking in the garden, and the girl thinks how beautiful it is there. Marquis claims that when he was little, he often ran there when he was upset, and he didn't want to run far because he hoped that someone would find him. Well, if only. He hid in the nearest garden, and the maid found him quickly, so he always chose this place. When the guy was hiding, his mother always found him. And although people think that they should do this, for him, this place is associated with memories. The main character thinks that when this man was a child, his eyes and mouth should have been similar. Well, probably the eyes were bigger and sweeter after all. Alina's faces should have been softer. And moreover, the young lady thinks that something is wrong, because for some reason she remembers that child. She was a little girl, and she lived with the young lady when she was little. Unforgettable memories are associated with her, but one day, the young lady suddenly disappeared. The parents of the main character were seriously upset, but it was always difficult to find the little girl who left without saying a word, so the girl doesn't know why they lived together. No reason why she disappeared, and one sunny morning they brought her home because they swam together, and the main character thinks that she cannot possibly be a marquise. Looking at the blonde, the young lady thinks that he must have been a very handsome boy. Ash turns to Chloe and asks if she can stand there for a while, after which the guy gets down on one knee, which makes the main character very surprised. And the Marquis delivery person asks if Chloe will marry him. The young lady is shocked by this, but then the girl clasps her hands and says that they are already married. The guy claims that of course the young lady and his wife are on paper, but he never formally proposed to her. And Chloe didn't choose him, and even more so this time, he wants to propose to her directly. After all, if someone important appears in his life, then he wants her to sincerely choose him. And the main character thought that after what she experienced, her heart was closed to love. But the girl understands that she wants to give these feelings another chance. The one who said that she was everything to him and proposed to her. The main character then asks if the guy will let her go if she wants to leave there. The young man shudders a little at this and then claims that she can do as she wishes. Chloe, looking at him, thinks that this man, despite the fact that he agreed to let her go, well, it doesn't look like he will ever want this. And perhaps, when she leaves, the guy will continue to chase her. And this is not just a game of imagination or intuition, because in the past, the girl has already suffered from this. But nevertheless, she now confidently claims that she agrees to become his wife. The blonde then, with a smile on his face, asks Chloe if she will allow him to wear the ring. And the main character answers that yes, and then extends her hand. The guy, pulling on the ring, gets a little worried and apologizes for doing it just now. And when he finishes, the young lady thinks that this ring sits on her finger like in Lithuania. The young man claims that Vrinikla used this ring for engagement, passing it down from generation to generation, and it was made of a special metal, because when it interacts with body temperature, it itself adapts to her finger. The main character of the ring inspection thinks it is amazing, and the blonde then claims that now it is hers, so the girl should wear it all the time, and the main character agrees. And the guy then claims that he has been planning to hold a marriage ceremony for a long time, so asking the girl what she thinks. And the young lady replies that if that's what he wants, then she doesn't mind. The bandit then claims that if Chloe doesn't like it, then they can just discreetly celebrate everything just between them. The young man, seeing how the main character clasps her hands near her chest, asks if something happened. And the main character says that she thinks in the end she always wanted this. The young lady understands that this is not a dream, and it is true, so the girl does not want to miss this chance. And if this is possible, then the young lady wants to be happy a little longer. The Marquis turns to her and claims that Chloe deserves it. And she is his favorite, so let him accept this as a gift. And the main character claims that the guy is a Marquis, and then asks why he is so kind to her and whether it is because of his appearance. Or he feels sorry for her, or maybe it's because he feels some kind of responsibility. The young man only asks with a smile on his face if this is what the girl is thinking about now. The guy claims that he likes her beauty, but that's not all. And he understands the position of the young lady, and also fulfills his obligations. But there is something more. The brown-haired woman asks what it is, and the guy claims that he knows her heart and knows how valuable her feelings are. After which, the young man claims that he loves her more than anything in the world, and the main character asks in surprise if there is a reason for this. And does he love her? The young man claims that if a girl needs another reason for love, then she can add up everything that he named, but no one can explain what love is. And the guy with a smile on his face claims that he loves the young lady because she is she and because she is his favorite. The main character once again repeats the word love, and the blonde claims that everything is true and this is love. Chloe thinks she wants to believe it even if it's a lie, but she's been burned one too many times when someone says they love her with all their heart. Therefore, the girl thinks that it was a long journey and does not understand why all Ash's words and all his actions make her so happy and why she wants to believe in it. The young lady also does not understand why tears are rolling from her eyes. A short time later, the blonde asks if the young lady wants to go somewhere before the ceremony. After all, he thinks that she is already tired of wandering around the estate. The girl is thinking about the place where she wants to go, and then he calls the Winsella orphanage. The blonde then asks if the young lady lived there before, and the girl replies that yes, and thinks that if she does not accept the past, then she will have no future. But the past, which she bluntly said, still exists, but now she is ready to accept it and wants to be loved. The girl thinks that she wants to understand why it is so difficult for her to trust people, and maybe by cutting herself off from everything she was trying to escape. So perhaps in order to move on, she must face reality. That same night, the main character wakes up from a nightmare and breathes heavily. The girl with tears in her eyes thinks that because this is an absolutely safe place, she slept like a lump without seeing dreams for a long time. And her condition improved so that this nightmare reminded her of all those horrors. After the girl married Joseph, he continued to torment her not only during the day, but also at night. And when she was locked up at home, the young lady most often just sewed. Her past husband claimed that he didn't care about rabble like her, and the girl should be proud that he took her as his wife. The young lady thought it was nonsense, so she got angry and denied it. Every time she contradicted her, she received beatings and mockery in response. Therefore, the main character is afraid of the night, and when she is left alone, it turns out that this nightmare will swallow her. The young lady turns on her side and looks at the ring on her hand. The young lady thinks that maybe it's just imagination, but she wonders what kind of feeling excites her so much. After which, the main character gets out of bed and heads into the corridor. The girl thinks that there is no suitable place for her on this estate, although there are even forest-sized gardens around. Well, all she wants is to unlearn in the outside world, somewhere, but not in her room. The girl, looking at the door of one of the rooms, understands that if she opens it, she will find out the secret that Ash Rinnicle kept. And although it seems to her that she almost succumbed to his sweet words, she cannot open her heart so easily after so many wounds. But in addition to words, he also treated her kindly, punished people who offended her, and said that he loved her and also proposed. But even if she opens a door that she should never have opened, if the guy loves her, he will definitely forgive her. Chloe decides to check whether this man's love is real or not, and whether he will love her even if she opens this door. The young lady, pulling the handle, realizes that the door is not locked and thinks whether to open this door or not to open it. The young lady thinks about it again, and then decides that it's not worth opening it after all. When the girl removes her hand, she thinks that the guy didn't want to show it, but she still wanted to open this door against his will. Therefore, isn't it violence to act towards others because you yourself hate it when they do this to you? Chloe thinks how stupid love is that requires testing, but on the other hand, he allowed her everything except the opening of this room. And perhaps, if the young lady asks, he will allow her to open this room. And after all, before feelings of gratitude, she began with suspicion, so the main character thinks that something is broken. After all, she had never doubted or tried to believe in the feelings of others until many bad things happened to her. At least with her mind, the girl understands that now enough is enough and she can plunge into happiness. But the heart cannot forget all this so easily. A short time ago, the Marquis saw a girl walking along the corridor. The guy, standing around the corner, wondered if it was Chloe, and then looked at that same room and saw the girl stretching out her hand to her. The young man thinks whether she will open this door, because if the girl does so and finds out about everything, then he doesn't even know what she will do. The young lady may be surprised, scared, or will call for him, But the guy thinks that in any case, this will not end well. However, nevertheless, if it is her choice, then it is not so important. However, suddenly, the guy sees how the young lady still decides not to open this door, and then he realizes that after all those terrible events, he should behave more carefully and respect the promises of others. Ash understands that Chloe is not so greedy, and even though her terrible past has left a deep wound in her heart, but it could never change her good nature, and the girl never changed. The blonde feels lucky, but at the same time he feels sorry for the young lady, so the guy thinks about what to do. To fill her heart with happiness and love, the Marquis clenches his fists and then turns to Chloe. The main character gets a little scared from this and immediately turns around. And when he does this, he sees his husband there. The guy asks if the young lady can't sleep, and the girl, bowing her head, thinks how long he has been there, and the Marquis must have seen everything she did, and also the moment when she doubted standing in front of the door. The main character replies that yes. The guy asks if she often has nightmares. The young lady replies that no, and she dreams of them very rarely. And the blonde says that although it's rare, they can still harm her, and Chloe promised that she would let the doctor examine her. But the main character only asks why the Marquis woke up. The young man already claims that he is a night owl and sleeps lightly, and Chloe now understands what's going on, and she didn't even know about it. The guy claims that when a person has a lover, he can never sleep peacefully without his affection. Moreover, he had never shared a bed with someone before. The main character is a little surprised by this, and thinks that one day she will fulfill her part of the duty. The girl does her part of the marital duty, and thinks about how important the descendants are for a noble family. After which she bows her head and claims that she often thinks about her obligations. The guy is a little surprised by this, and then he just smiles and sighs. The young man turns to Chloe and asks her to relax her hand. The main character thinks that she did it unconsciously, and the guy then turns to her and says that everything he does and wants to do with her has nothing to do with procreation, and if the girl doesn't want to give birth, then they can just take the child from the orphanage, so there's no need to force yourself to do what she wants. I do not want. After all, she is the one he loves and respects, so just being close to the young lady is enough for him. The young man tells Chloe not to try to hide her regrets and fatigue, and no matter what it is, let her share it with him, because the Marquis will always support her, and if the girl is not ready, then they can postpone everything. The main character is a little shocked by this, and the Marquis asks if she understands. The young lady then asks if it's true about the guy taking her hair in his hand, and states that, of course. Kissing a lock of the young lady's hair, he claims that the girl is very important to him, and she can't even imagine how much. Chloe is silent for a while, and then thinks that for some reason she feels better after his words. The blonde invites the young lady to go to bed, and if she is scared, then he can sit with her until the girl falls asleep. Chloe thinks that all her worries have disappeared, as if they never existed, so now she claims that yes, and if he can, then let him visit near her. The next day, the maid asks the lady if they are going to the orphanage with his lordship. The main character answers yes, and the maid then thinks whether she wants to help, because it is a common thing for the nobility to show their generosity to the people. But the fact that the first place they visit together will be an orphanage is quite strange. And of course, their desire to help me is nothing strange, but their first trip together simply cannot go like this. The main character then turns to her maid and claims that she worked there before, and the blonde now understands the intention of her mistresses, which means the girl wants to go there either because she has pleasant memories associated with it, or, on the contrary, they are very bad. And now she wants to show everyone how well she lives. And it could be one of two things, but the maid shouldn't care about that, and it's her job now. This is to make the lady as beautiful as possible. A little later, the young lady is ready, and the maid, with a proud smile on her face, claims that everything is ready, and Chloe thanks her maid and then heads to the door. The girl thinks that she never thought about this when she left the orphanage, but even though the manager squeezed all the juice out of her, she never left her hungry. So the young lady seems that, although she was not the most pleasant person in the world, but she wasn't the worst either. The main character thinks that she was rarely paid for her work, but the money that the girl promised her was spent on Stephen's treatment. She said that if the young lady wanted to get the money that I earned, she would pay every last copper without any problems. But in tears, she asked me to think about poor Stephen, to think about saving him, so the main character agreed not to receive a full salary. Hard and unpaid work, marriage to Joseph. If you think about it now, there were several strange moments in the manager's words. Therefore, the main character thinks that she needs to deal with the past in order to move on, and needs to find out whether this woman was just a complex person with oddities. Or maybe she really just used the young lady, because if it's the latter, but the girl doesn't finish her thought and just moves on. A short time later, everyone in the orphanage is preparing for the arrival of the Marquis. The manager asks one of the girls if she has finished her work, and the little girl answers that yes. The woman thinks that perhaps the Marquis wants to come there to donate a tidy sum to them. But then the manager hears that most likely he has already arrived, and after that he goes outside. When the woman does this, she sees that, of course, a large retinue has arrived with the Marquis. And then the woman sees the Marquis getting out of the carriage. The manager is a little embarrassed and thinks how handsome he is. The blonde extends his hand to the young lady who is in the carriage and offers her his help. And the woman thinks that the Marquis would look at her like that. But when she sees the young lady's brown hair, he's a little surprised, and when he sees her completely, he even begins to shake a little. The woman thinks what this girl is doing there and why Chloe is with the Marquis. But the manager thinks that this cannot be the case, because Chloe's origin could only have been to become a mistress. But officially, the wife of the Marquis will never be, and this girl should just be very similar to her. And the main character turns to the woman and says that they have not seen each other for a long time and then calls her name. The woman is in complete shock and wonders if she heard something wrong. After which Doria, with a forced smile, asks Chloe if it is. And he adds that it cannot be because the girl is now the wife of the Marquis. The brunette awkwardly says that they really haven't seen each other for a long time, and the young lady looks great. The main character thinks that then the manager seemed so mature, and she thought that with her wisdom and experience, she would take care of her. But she had to take care of other children in the middle of the night, and everything else in the orphanage, and it felt like she could do all this with her eyes closed. The manager of the orphanage just looks at the young lady's jewelry, and then he looks at the Marquise's beautiful face and gets a little embarrassed. The main character understands that this woman taught her how dangerous men can be, but she herself behaves completely differently, and this is quite hypocritical. The girl thinks how can she trust someone who says one thing but does something completely different. The brunette then turns to Chloe and asks what happened to Joseph. The young lady claims that he sold her to the Marquis at auction. The brunette is a little surprised by this. The Marquis claims that thanks to him he now has a wonderful wife. Manager Doria says that his lordship is right, and she is still a beauty. The brunette claims that she does not know what exactly happened to the young lady, but it seems that everything turned out quite well, and now the young lady looks like a princess from a fairy tale. The main character repeats these words in her thoughts and wonders if this is a compliment. But then she leads a rather familiar silhouette, and after looking a little closer, she understands. What is this, Irene? The main character turns to her, to which the girl turns around and asks if it's really Chloe. The young lady just pulls her hand away from the manager's and says that it's really her. Then he approaches his friend and asks why she is still in the orphanage. And the girl claims that the manager offered her Chloe's place, so she stayed to work there, but she still got used to it, and the world is full of dangerous men. The brown-haired girl thinks about these words and thinks that this world is full of both good and bad, but the way the girl said it reminds her of those days. The lady with red hair just asks how Chloe is doing, but then she sees the Marquis and gets a little scared. The girl shakes a little and then claims that she remembered because she still needs to do some laundry. The main character's friend says it was nice to see her and then turns around and runs away. The lady with brown hair, looking at her, remembers herself. Then he asks how long Irene has been working there. The brunette only claims that the young lady knows what a sensual and vulnerable soul she has. The manager also says that she thought it would be better for the girl to stay and work there than to end up in the outside world, so she offered her a job at the orphanage. The main character is silent and then claims that it was nice to see Irene, but she would like to talk to her alone. The brunette then looks away and claims that the girl is happy and mixed, so she doesn't know if she will agree, but she will ask. The blonde claims that if today's donation is not enough, next time he will offer a larger amount because his wife is very important to him, so he asks the manager to fulfill her request if possible. When a woman hears about money, she smiles and claims that she will make every effort to persuade her. The Marquis thanks the woman. A short time later, the main character is already talking to Irene and asking how old she is now. The young lady replies that she is 16, and Chloe then asks why she didn't find a job in town like everyone else. The lady with pink hair claims that it's because she doesn't know how to behave there and because men scare her. The lady with brown hair says that she used to get into the city without any problems. And the girl says that her friend herself knows that not all people are kind, and the manager said that it would be better this way. The main character, looking at the young lady's hair, claims that her hair was so beautiful when she let it down. But the girl claims that being beautiful is too dangerous. And Chloe knows that it is better to dress simply and not attract attention at all. The main character understands that this girl is not the only one who thinks so. After all, Doria pretended to care about them, while in fact she destroyed their remnants of self-confidence, and she was finally discovered. Chloe can't believe she thought the manager was trying for her. The woman really seemed to have been leading them around her finger all this time, and finally, they opened her up. Chloe doesn't know what she's feeling, and whether it's a delayed realization or anger, or maybe it's sadness. The main character turns to her friend and asks if she knows what happened to Stephen after she left. And she herself thinks that Doria said that she would use the money unpaid to her and received from Joseph to cure Stephen. The lady with pink hair then asks if her friend is talking about Stephen, and then claims that he fell into an eternal sleep after Chloe left. The main character, in complete shock from this, asks whether Chauvin has fallen into eternal sleep. The young lady thought that the sacrifices she made then would save him. The girl then asks if it turns out that even after the operation he still did not survive, but the young lady with pink hair only asks what operation she is talking about. After all, Stephen had never undergone any operations, and the manager said that the time for the operation had long passed, so the doctor simply prescribed an anesthetic to ease his descent into eternal sleep. And maybe thanks to this, he was able to calmly fall into eternal sleep. They all thought that, considering how he was suffering, this was the best outcome. Chloe asks if he had surgery, but her friend replies that everything is correct. The girl remembers exactly how the doctor said that if the guy had an operation, he would be able to survive. And it was a complex operation that would require several doctors, which is why it was so expensive. Doria said that the only way to get that much money was to marry Joseph, so she agreed, and when the woman said that even that would not be enough, she allowed her to use the money that she owed her. But Stephen died, and the operation was never performed, so the main character wonders where all her money went then. Irene claims that Doria told her that if she continues to work for us, she will find her a good husband, just like Chloe. And she said that there were many dangerous men in the world, and that she should protect beautiful girls like her. After which, Irene turns to Chloe and enthusiastically asks if it is true that the young lady really married a wonderful man. The main character is silent for a bit, and then says that no, and Doria chose the wrong man for her that the girl saw today. Irene asks if she is serious. The main character answers yes, and now it became clear to her what she had to do. The girl understands that she needs more evidence to confirm her suspicions, and she must intervene. But the main character understands that she doesn't have the slightest idea how to investigate such cases. But nevertheless, now she has someone who can help. Chloe thinks that in the past, she would be afraid to ask about it, but this is too important, and she needs to get over herself so that she can move on. The girl thinks that she needs to deal with this wrong relationship, so that she can give a place in her heart to people who care about her. So the young lady turns to his lordship and says that she has one request for him. The guy asks what happened, and Chloe then asks if he can help her investigate what's going on at Winzella's orphanage. The Marquis asks if the young lady wants to know if there are kidnappings, fraud, or anything else that breaks the law. The main character is a little surprised, and thinks how he found out, and then asks if the guy understands such things. And the Marquis replies that yes, and a little. The brunette thinks that finding someone's weaknesses is not an easy task, and the investigation includes many different things. They are not always associated with something bad, and she did not show any hostility towards Doria. But Ash immediately assumed that he needed to look for something bad, and this means that he constantly encounters such things. Therefore, the main character directly asks whether he often encounters this kind of thing, and is therefore familiar with this kind of investigation. The young man, with a smile, affirms that yes, and the girl thinks that it was not something that she could not come to terms with. The blonde thinks that he is not yet ready to tell her about everything he has done to now be at his status. After all, the people who took what rightfully belonged to him received what they deserved. The guy understands now is not the time to tell Chloe about how they had to pay. After all, she is already suffering because of the problems that she personally faced. So the young man claims that now everything is fine because he is with her, and he himself thinks that always when he was in pain or hard, he thought about her. And although it did not last long, the young lady was the embodiment of warmth and his first love. Now the guy smiles bitterly and thinks that it's a pity that he couldn't find her earlier. And it's a pity that she had to go through all these misfortunes. It's also a pity that she met him. The main character replies that he is flattering with these words, and that she is not as good a person as he says. The young man is only silent for a little while, but he himself thinks that she has never hidden a feeling in this way before, and he remembers her still laughing and shining brighter than the sun. She was a ray of light in his life, but if the young lady has changed, that does not mean that his feelings for her have changed. Therefore, the blonde claims that Chloe is amazing to him. He claims he wasn't saying this to embarrass her, he just wanted to tell her how much she means to him. Ash thinks that the girl is trying to figure herself out, and he doesn't want to become another burden for her, so he can tell her how he found her later. Now he tells Chloe to fulfill her request, and the main character thanks my lord. The blonde asks the young lady to call him by his first name, because when she says my lord, it sounds a little cold. The girl agrees, and the young man claims that at first it may be difficult, but let her try until she gets used to it, because he is not asking her to love him, but let her at least allow him to become her close friend. The main character only blushes a little and remains silent, and then turns to her husband, and she claims that he has already become the closest person to her. The guy is also a little embarrassed by this, and he himself thinks that she will never know how long he has been waiting for this moment. Now the blonde tells Chloe that she can't even imagine how happy he is to hear this. A few days later, the manager of the orphanage is biting her nails and thinking that the Marquis is supposed to arrive today, and Chloe will have to go with him. The fact that Doria would have to meet Chloe again infuriated her. She felt like a witch from a fairy tale, and she would have to see Chloe, the girl she thought she had sent to the abyss of hell, along with the most handsome man she had ever seen. The only thing that calmed the woman's anger was the round sum that the Marquis donated last time. Doria spent most of the donations and grants from the Empire on the children from the orphanage, and the money she received by doing double accounting may seem like a huge amount to most people, but the woman considered this a worthy reward for her work. Now the manager understands that she didn't even think that Joseph could sell Chloe, because he was so obsessed with her that she thought the guy would never let her go. The brunette thinks that her nails hurt because she just bit them. The manager reflects that who would have thought that such a titled man would become her husband. But suddenly she listens to sounds behind and thinks that it is impossible for Irene to have the same fate, so she needs to sell the girl not as a wife, but as something worse, because she was too kind to Chloe. And if she sent her to a place where there was no escape, then she would not have to see her in such a high position. And there are many places that need pretty girls, so all the manager needs to do is sell Irene to one of the worst. The lady with pink hair reports that the Marquis and Marchioness have arrived, and the manager then gets up from her desk and claims that she will take her out now. But she herself thinks that barely a week has passed since the last time, so most likely she came to take advantage of her position. And the girl pretends that she came to express her gratitude to the shelter. Most likely she wants to pretend to be a generous marquise. This, of course, infuriates, but the woman thinks what she can do. After all, she needs to control herself if she wants to receive donations. Approaching the guests, she claims that they have no idea how long she has been looking for parents for that sick boy, and then asks if the young lady remembers Billy. But he was adopted by a wonderful couple a couple of months ago, and the woman asks, isn't that wonderful? After all, she spent months trying to find suitable parents for him. The main character only asks if this is all, and the brunette is surprised and asks what she is talking about. The woman thought that the girl would simply nod in response as usual, but she does not understand what kind of look she has now. The brunette thought that after her stories, they would give her more money, and now she's a little nervous, and says that one way or another she will. But the main character then only coldly turns to Doria and asks if the woman knows how she lived after her wedding with Joseph. The manager gets a little nervous about this and then says that it hardly matters now. And the young lady asks, I think it's rude for her to discuss her ex-husband in the presence of her new one. The blonde then claims that if this is what his beloved wants to talk about, then he is not against it, and the woman then does not know how to respond to this. And Chloe claims that Joseph humiliated and beat her, and she was never allowed to go out and talk to anyone. She was locked in a room and forced to work through starvation. She lived for 3 years as Joseph's toy. The brunette then says a little sadly that it's understandable, and she didn't think that he was such a person. After which the woman extends her hand to Chloe and claims that she must have had a hard time, but the main character only knocks her hand away. And he asks what the manager spent the money she received from Joseph on. The brunette claims that she spent it on Stephen's operation, and the young lady knows everything very well herself. Chloe then gets even angrier, and then claims that she heard that Stephen never had any surgery, and he fell into a crippled sleep on painkillers. The woman is very worried about this, and he asks if Irene told Chloe about this because if so, she was mistaken. And she wanted Stephen to have surgery, but the doctor said it was too late, so the main character only interrupts her and asks what it means if Stephen had surgery on Tony. Should the woman return the money that was not paid to her and received from Joseph? The brunette claims that she tried to return them, but could not contact Joseph and could not do anything about it. The young lady then asks where is this money now, and the manager tries to change the subject and says that she didn't think that Chloe would be so petty if she became a marquise. After all, she spent them on the needs of the shelter, but if the girl wants to get them back, she will return everything. The main character understands that the manager does not have a shred of regret, and she thinks that she has not done anything wrong. The young lady then provides the manager with Dr. Robert's notes regarding Stephen's illness, and the chances that the patient would survive if the operation was performed were great, but the managers in tears refused it, citing the fact that the orphanage did not have that kind of money. The woman was not shocked by this evidence and says that this was some kind of misunderstanding, after which the girl puts the financial report of the orphanage on the table and claims that nowhere is it indicated the amount that she received from Joseph, not her unpaid money, and there are also inconsistencies about the amount of money received and spend it on the needs of the orphanage. Doria's savings and trinkets continue to increase. The woman is shocked and asks how the girl found out about this because it is illegal. The young lady then claims that her husband, the Marquis, has the right to such investigations granted by the Emperor, and he can conduct the investigation independently of the city guard, so everything is within the law. The blonde claims that even after digging a little, it became clear to him that this list is actually much more extensive. The manager then clutches her dress and claims that she is a good person, so how dare they blame her. After which the woman screams that the girl became a marquise only thanks to her, and in the end, it ended well. But the girl claims that this will not cure the pain she experienced. The main game does not understand that the woman would never have sold her if she felt at least a little sorry for her, and then she would not have to live thinking that it was all her fault. Doria has ever been beaten, and if she knows what it's like to tremble in fear of someone who is stronger than you, threatening and beating you for no reason. After all, then you begin to lose yourself and you want to cry, but you can't for fear of even more beating. You start asking for forgiveness even if you haven't done anything wrong. You always find yourself to blame, and at some point you start to think that you're really doing everything wrong, although that's not the case. There's nothing you can do except to beg for forgiveness, because the person who beats you will not stop until you apologize, because you feel that if you do otherwise, you will plunge into eternal sleep. 3 years is quite a long period, and even if the young lady was kept in captivity, the desire to live would be much stronger, so the girl claims that she lived for 3 years, begging for mercy, and all because the woman sold her for a handful of coins. The brunette is shocked by this and asks what the girl means by sold, because she did it for her own good. The main character just looks at the manager and thinks that Doria I wanted her to suffer and didn't just want the aviator to do so. Chloe claims that before it seemed to her that it was all her fault, but now she realized that she was not to blame for anything, and partly she should be blamed only for the fact that she trusted people like Doria too much. And the girl asks if she would have been in this situation if people had not deliberately tried to deceive her. Just because she believed the woman's lies does not mean that her action was not wrong. Therefore, it is time for him to take responsibility. The woman gets very angry about this. She was always above Chloe in her mind. Chloe was beautiful, smart, and kind, and Doria felt a sense of power in controlling a girl as special as Chloe. But now this girl threatens her as if she is the one from the fairy tale, so the woman screams that everything is true, and she sold the girl to Joseph. He was a bastard, but he really wanted her. The brunette told Stephen to ask the young lady to save his life, and said that the girl would do anything to save him, and Chloe did just that. The main character just looks at the woman coldly, and she, breathing heavily, understands what she has done and closes her eyes, trying to calm down. Then he tells Chloe to listen, and claims that she is sorry that the young lady had to go through all this, and she did not think that Joseph would beat her like that. But it was only because of all this that she met a wonderful new husband. The blonde heard all this and almost loses his temper, but the woman continues and says that the girl was able to overcome all adversity and met her prince as if in a fairy tale. Therefore, we can say that all this is only due to the fact that she sold it to Joseph, and the woman asks if they can leave everything like that. The main character clutches her dress and claims that if the Marquis had not saved her, who knows how many more terrible things would have happened to her, and she could have fallen into eternal sleep without ever meeting him. And what she has become, she can only thank her husband, Ash Rinicles, and the woman has nothing to do with this, so let her not deceive herself. After all, she will suffer a well-deserved punishment for theft and fraud. And most of all, she is interested in hearing what her fiancé has to say to this. The brunette just asks what she is thinking about. How can a girl like her threaten? But suddenly, someone from behind addresses Doria, and the woman thinks that this voice is very familiar, after which she turns around and sees a man with silver hair there. The manager asks how long Gray stood there, after which she runs up to the man and says that her former pupil has become a marquise and decided to visit her, but she has become a popular person. But it seems that there was a slight misunderstanding. Doria understands that he was supposed to arrive earlier than tomorrow, and she tried to send all the important people away because Chloe's arrival did not bode well. But now she doesn't understand why Gray are you there. He was the woman's first romantic relationship and her first love, so she can't lose him like that. But when the manager tries to tell him something, the guy claims that he has already heard enough. The brunette asks what he means and asks him to let her explain everything, because the words can be misunderstood if you don't hear the whole story. The man only claims that he doesn't seem to understand people, and he thought that he had met the love of his life, but as it turns out, he was mistaken. And he thought that the woman always selflessly took care of the children because she loved them. The brunette claims that everything is so, but the man then screams, "What kind of person is capable of dragging someone into an unwanted marriage, and even for money, because she did all this for her own benefit?" The woman, shocked by this, doesn't even know what to answer, and the man just turns around and claims that the engagement has been canceled, and if she wants compensation for the inconvenience, she will get it. The brunette screams out the name of her lover, and he just looks at her coldly and claims that he doesn't think she's counting on a large sum. For Doria, at that moment, it was all over. Her position as a manager, a man who could drown her in his love, she lost all this in one moment. That's why the woman is now asking if all this happened because she is not beautiful enough. She thinks that now a cold prison cell awaits her or major statements. The brunette claims that she is not beautiful enough. She thinks that if she were as beautiful as Chloe, maybe everything would have turned out differently, and maybe the guy would just turn a blind eye to such a trifle. But the man claims that he never even thought that the manager was ugly, and he thought that her heart was still beautiful. It looks like he was very mistaken. So Gray turns around and says he has nothing more to say. The woman screams for him to wait because this is all a misunderstanding. But when the guy leaves, she only remains silent and then turns to the main character, asking if she is happy now that she has deprived her of everything. But the brown-haired woman claims that she hasn't yet, and the woman then turns around furiously. And waving his hand, he screams that this little trash will regret it. However, then someone grabs the woman's hand and tells her to be quiet. Otherwise, she will lose her tongue. The woman is shocked by this, thinks that it is beyond her strength, and her instinct shows that it is dangerous to continue. Doria, lying on the ground, thinks that she is finished. A little time later, the main character goes in a carriage with the Marquis. The girl thinks that the manager turned out to be more than she thought, and even calling her a person seems wrong. After all, even when Doria did all these terrible things, she pretended to be white and fluffy. Therefore, the main character thinks how hypocritical she is. And after all, Doria insisted on her innocence from the very beginning. She didn't even have an ounce of regret for the fact that the young lady suffered for several years after she sold her to Joseph. The main character thinks that she would have continued to listen to the woman if Ash had not stood up. Parisa touches the young lady's hand, and she claims that she needs to rest, and they can stop, the main character claims. That her soul is not as easy now as she imagined, but she herself thinks that perhaps this is because of Togo. That the manager did not beg for forgiveness, and the young lady feels that she felt better after speaking out, but she still feels empty inside. The blonde claims that this is probably due to the fact that the others who were guilty were not punished. The young lady asks if he is sure about the guy and answers that, yes, it became easier for him when he dealt with everyone who did wrong to him. Maybe it's because the two are a little different, but Chloe didn't experience the same thing as Ash. She did not experience such pleasure when she dealt with people who were taking her place and did not feel peace from taking revenge on them. The young man asks how it happened that the girl ended up in the shelter, and the main character says that after the death of her parents, One day, a couple who lived next door came, and she knew who you were because they periodically came to them. The girl was small and naive, and they offered her help. These people said that after a bad investment, their parents had debts, so they sold their estate to pay off the debts. And they got her a place in the shelter. The girl thinks how to explain to her what she felt then, and it seemed as if she had been sucked in by a tornado. A small suitcase was all her property, and when the trembling girl ended up in the shelter, it gave her at least a ray of hope. The main character claims that their house was on the outskirts of the capital, and his father preferred to be close to nature than in the crush of the city crowd. The man wanted to settle even further, but all the deals were concluded in the capital, so he had to settle nearby. The blonde then asks if the shelter is not far from the capital, and it took them a whole day to get there, and they also saw many other shelters passed. The young lady states that she would like to believe that they have good conditions there, and Ash then asks the young lady if she is saying that she was in the past tense for a reason, and if the girl is saying that because she also thinks that her parents acted strangely. The main character is silent for a while, and then replies that yes, she feels as if a blindfold has been removed from her eyes, and she can finally see. The young man claims that if the girl wants, he can investigate the row of blankets, and if they really tried to help her out of good intentions, then he wants to thank them. The main character claims that she understands what the marquee means, but for now she wants to give all her attention to the upcoming tea party, and she knows that she still has a lot to do. But since she will be presented for the first time as the wife of the marquis, she wants to give it her all. The guy is a little surprised by this, and then with a smile on his face, says that Chloe really is the most wonderful woman. And the main character then says that she is not sure that she feels the same towards him as he does towards her. But she claims that she is grateful to Ash for everything he has done for her, and every day he becomes more and more special to her. Solving the problems of her past is also important, but it is much more important for the young lady to love Ash as much as he loves her. The guy is a little surprised by these words, and after a little silence turns to the main character, and he gets a little closer to her. At this time, the young lady slowly closes her eyes and also leans towards the marquis, after which their lips intertwine in a kiss. After Chloe returned, she spent the rest of the day reading a book in bed. The doctor said that she had a fever because of fatigue and stress, but the feeling of betrayal that she experienced from people she trusted could not just disappear. The young lady's whole body ached as if all these negative feelings that she experienced because of her naivety and to which she was accustomed were blades wounding every centimeter of her body. However, although these thoughts ate her up from the inside, the girl was not alone. She was comforted by the warmth of the one who held her hand. Chloe desperately held on to the hand that saved her from an endless nightmare, and the walls that she had built in her heart to protect herself began to crumble little by little. The girl thinks about the forbidden room and thinks that if Ash so desperately wants to hide something from her, then he should respect his wishes. After all, everyone has their secrets, and the girl must trust him, because it would be wrong to consider him a bad person. And if a person made a mistake, this does not mean that he cannot change. As soon as the main character decided to trust the marquis, it was like a miracle, but she felt better. And a day later, her fever went away. When Chloe felt better, she paid all her attention to the upcoming preparations. The young lady understands that there are 4 days left before the tea party, and it was supposed to take place on the estate of the Marquis Bleen. A countless number of invitations were received by the Rinical estate every day, and someone as obese as Ash could afford to accept or reject any of them. As soon as rumors about the Marquis's marriage spread, invitations began to arrive even more. The main character chose the most beautiful invitation, and it was not a large-scale tea party like in a palace, but it was the first event that she would attend. Already as a marquise, and if the girl could cope with it, then she felt as if she could cope with any other invitation that she would receive in the future. The young lady thinks that the dress and shoes have already been bought, and men do not attend such events because tea parties are only for ladies. This was a challenge that the young lady had to face alone. Touching the young lady's forehead, the marquis states that the fever seems to have passed, and then asks how Chloe is feeling. The girl claims that she is already better, and it's all thanks to him. And then she stays quiet for a bit and claims that she needs to tell Ash something. The guy asks what it is, and the young lady squeezes her hands a little and thinks that she wanted to tell him this even to her daughter drinking, after which the girl claims that she wants to share her bed with Ash. But when the girl looks at her husband's face, she sees that he is greatly surprised. The young lady realizes that at first she felt gratitude, later suspicion. But the more the guy showed his love for her, the more she began to believe him, and the girl felt sincerity in his actions and words. But she understands that the guy can be different. The young man is already asking if Chloe is sure because she has just recovered, so he offers to discuss this when the girl is fully recovered. And the main character says tomorrow. The guy asks what she is talking about, and the girl replies that she already feels better. Therefore, he suggests spending tomorrow night together. The young man then turns to Chloe and says that she has no need to force herself, and the girl confidently asserts that she does not force herself and wants to do it. After all, at the tea party, appear as his wife in every sense of the word. This makes the young lady's ears turn a little red, and the Marks look at her. He claims that he didn't even think that his wife was so sweet. The young man says that he knows that it was not easy for the girl to say this and thanks her for plucking up the courage. He was worried that if he was the first to talk about it, the young lady would feel pressure, but if he decided to talk about it first, then she might not have to step over herself to say it. After which the Marquis tells his wife to come to his room tomorrow night, and he will tell Alicia to prepare everything. She can't wait for tomorrow. The guy thinks that he can't even believe that Chloe was the first to talk about this. The young man was going to start talking about this only after she got settled, but he couldn't even imagine that the girl would say so directly about it. However, she was like this before. Chloe has never liked walking around. She does everything quickly but carefully. However, the guy still thinks that they need to wait a while because he wants the girl to fall in love with him even more. But, on the other hand, she said that first she wanted to share the bed with him, and the blonde, putting his hand on his face, thinks why he can't stop smiling, even if as a thank you. Or the girl decided to do this out of a sense of duty, but he is still glad that they can truly become husband and wife. Because of this, the guy still can't help but smile, and then starts laughing almost out loud. The next evening, the maid prepared the main character by washing her. Then the girl went to the Marquis, and without approaching the door, the chief maid claimed that her ladyship had arrived. The main character was a little nervous and wondered if everything would be okay. And what if she upsets the Marquis, or if he becomes disappointed in her? He can say how dare the young lady deceive her, but the girl understands that Ash is not like her last husband. The young lady tries to think about the good, because this is Ash after all, so he won't harm her. After this, the main character enters the Marquis's room, and examining it, realizes that the furnishings are just right for him. But suddenly the young lady is a little surprised to see the Marquis. The young man looks at her with a kind smile, and Chloe is a little embarrassed by this. The blonde man then turns to the main character, and the young lady looks away a little and asks what it is. The guy then takes her face and gently raises it to his, claiming that he hasn't done anything yet so she can relax. The young man claims that if the girl is too nervous, they can drink a glass of wine, but the main character refuses. The blonde then takes her hand and says that it's good, and then asks if she can come closer. The two of them then sit on the bed, and the blonde man addresses Chloe, claiming that if she doesn't want to do this, she can calmly tell him about it. The girl claims that this is not the case, but she herself thinks that doubts aside, after all, she was the one who suggested it. Ash then straightens the young lady's hair and brings her face closer to his, kissing the girl on the cheek, and then slowly lowers himself to her ball, leaving a light kiss there. After that, he settles Chloe on the bed, and the girl thinks that if she just freezes, then everything will be fine. But what if she remembers what her last husband called her? The girl is very scared by this, but tries to think that Ash is different because she knows this for sure. The young lady realizes that she knows about this, but still cannot do anything about this fear. The girl thinks that she does not want to fall into eternal sleep, and at that moment, someone calls her. It turns out to be Maki's. He claims that everything is fine because she is safe. Chloe then apologizes, and the young man gives her a bag and claims that everything is fine and that she should just breathe into the bag. He says that the girl has nothing to apologize for, and he will be with her until she gets better. Chloe understood that an intimate relationship was impossible for her, even with the person she loved. The young lady felt disgusting and felt like she was going to vomit. Some inner voice turns to the young lady and asks if she really believes that this was not her fault, because there is a secret that she is hiding from the Marquis. The inner voice of the young lady asks if she thinks that the guy will treat her the same after he finds out about everything, and if she thinks that she will survive if Ash leaves her. But this is the best she has ever received. The main character then bites her lip and says that she is sorry. The girl covers her face and, crying bitterly, tells my lord that she is sorry that she disappointed him. The blonde just looks at her calmly and then asks if the young lady was so scared that she started calling him my lord again. The main character only remains silent in response to this. And the guy claims that he neither forces nor blames her, so he asks her to let him look at her face. Chloe then raises her head and thinks that the guy tried so hard to decorate the room, and she can't believe that it was all for nothing. The main character asks why Ash is always so patient with her. The girl understands that if it were Joseph, even if she was on her last legs, she would still do what she doesn't want without hesitating for a second, and it doesn't matter if she lost consciousness or not. The guy would have dropped everything and left, slamming the door. The young lady realizes that she must accept the fact that the Marquis is not like Joseph. Ash wipes away her tears and states that it doesn't mean he never gets angry or doesn't feel emotions. After all, he just tries to keep everything to himself when he thinks how dear the young lady is to him. Chloe understands that if she tells him what happened that night, will she be able to get rid of that feeling of guilt that is eating her up from the inside? And will she be able to erase these memories of the past at all? Stop blaming herself for something that is not her fault, but the Marquis can trust me in her. The young man turns to Chloe and says that he roughly understands what she went through, but does not know all the details and therefore cannot know exactly what she feels. But one thing he knows for sure is that this is not her fault. That's why Chloe needs to force herself, because he is grateful for her kindness. After all, the girl was trying to do something that she was afraid of because she was worried about him. The blonde insists that he wants them both to have fun. And if only he was pleased, then there would be no difference between the thing and the animal. The main character is a little surprised by such words, and now understands that Joseph behaved like an animal that cannot control its desires. The main character then says that it is not because of Ash, and not because of Togo because she does not love him. And rather, on the contrary, she wants to do this because she loves him. But the girl claims that she was scared because of Togo, that after their intimacy, the guy will become like Joseph. The Marquis asks if the young lady thought that he would be tough on her, like her last husband. The girl replies that yes, and the guy then claims that he would never do that to her. So Chloe doesn't have to force herself to do anything she doesn't want to do. The guy's heart began to ache, and it wasn't because she didn't trust him, but because he felt sorry when he saw how deep the young lady's wounds were. The young man then turns to Chloe, and the girl looks at him. And after that, he grabs her and lies down on the bed in an embrace. The blonde offers to just sleep together today and let the girl forget about her fears for a while, and also just remember that she is the most important person in the world for him. Or a young lady can think about the desserts that they will eat tomorrow. You can just imagine how sweet and tasty they will be. Then the young man is silent for a bit and thinks about whether he should talk about it. But then he finally decides to speak and claims that he can drag this bastard there and the young lady will do whatever she wants with him. The main character already claims that she doesn't want to see him even for the sake of revenge, and she just wants to continue living as if he never existed, at least if he has any sense that he will look for her. And this doesn't mean that she has forgiven him, but she just doesn't want to waste her time on someone who will never ask for forgiveness. The young lady wants to look to the future and not dwell on the past. The main character hugs her husband and says that it's all thanks to him, because thanks to Ash, she even has dreams about the future. That night, they did not become one as a married couple, and the girl does not know when they will become partners at all, but she knows for sure that Ash will never force and will wait for her. The blonde says that if Chloe wants it, then it's fine, but they really need to rest slower. It's been a long day. The Marquise agrees and thinks how wonderful and warming the heat of unselfish love is. On the day of the tea party, the young lady understood that she had to attend the Countess of Newborn's tea party. Her social position as well as the guest list was suitable, and the Countess was known to have good relations with all the ladies of high society. It was a good chance for her first appearance in high society as a marquise, and the reason she chose the ladies-only event was so she could make a good impression on the ladies before attending an event meant for everyone. If Ash were naked there, then they would pretend to be white and fluffy, simply because his whale is higher, and it will be easier to find their real ones if there are only women there. The main character thinks that she is worried, and not only because of the tea party. After all, the Marquis invited her to set a date for their wedding. The Emperor wants to choose her himself, but if there is a special day that the girl wants to choose, then of course they can hold the wedding on that day. The young lady said that they could carry out everything according to the will of the Emperor, and the blonde then said that nevertheless she thought about it because her loving husband was quite capable of pulling off such a thing. The girl thinks that she is so ashamed after that night, and that she cannot look Ash in the eye. The girl, putting on her shoes, thinks whether she deserves such happiness, because although she is happy, she is nervous at the same time. But now the young lady does not understand that she should concentrate on the upcoming tea party. The maid tells my lady that even a modest dress looks wonderful on her, and Chloe thinks that she can't miss this opportunity and hey, she should go back to her normal life. Finally, before leaving the room, the girl looks at the bear given by the Marquis, and I think that she can handle it. The Countess of Newbourne's estate was famous for its beautiful gardens. She had 2 children aged 8 and 6, and the woman was not extraordinary in any sense of the word, but her aura calmed all the people around. Now the woman with red hair greets the main character and thanks her for the fact that Marquise Vrinicle kept them company today. But she is as beautiful as they say about her, and it is a great honor for her to meet the Marquise. Chloe thanks the Countess for the invitation and states that she is glad to have the opportunity to enjoy such a wonderful tea party. The Countess then asks, why don't they go to the others? And when the main character passes by the ladies, she thinks that their gaze is directed only at her. The girl is much more nervous than she expected, but she can't show it to them because if she makes a mistake due to unforeseen circumstances, then it won't end with just a bad mood, and the name and honor of the Vrinicle family is at stake. Some of the girls approach the Marquise and greet her, but then the girl notices that the young ladies are crowded around something and turns around. But then she sees an old lady with luxurious jewelry. This woman approaches the young lady and claims that she came there because she heard that there would be someone not suitable for his position, and it must be the Marquise standing in front of her. The main character looks at the woman and thinks that she is clearly hostile. The girl remembered almost all the members of the imperial and noble families, and she studied their biographies so often that almost all the pages were erased. The young lady remembers reading a description that described her exactly, so she now leans over and states that she is honored to meet Her Highness. Venerable Empress Caroline Elsa Redigia, widow of the previous emperor. The young lady introduces herself and says her name is Chloe Vrinicle. The woman claims that she did not give permission to speak, and the main character apologizes to Her Highness and says that she was simply excited by her presence. The Empress then claims that she heard so many rumors that she simply had to see everything in person, and now it is clear to her that she simply wasted her time. After all, the girl is an ordinary commoner. The Countess then runs up to the two and addresses Her Highness. The girl is greeted and states that it is a great honor for her that Her Highness attended such an insignificant tea party, and if she allows, the Countess will escort her to the place. Well, the Empress claims that there is no need there. The girls hesitate among themselves, and the Empress claims that the Countess's standards have fallen since the last meeting. After all, how could she invite such a commoner? The Countess thinks that the widowed Empress is definitely someone who should not be taken into account, but she also cannot afford to fall into the favor of the Marquis Vrinicle, so in such a situation, it is important to remain neutral. The Empress just turns around and says that they ruined her mood, so let the roomers prepare the carriage, because there is no point for her to stay at a tea party with such low-grade guests. The Countess is a little nervous and thinks about what she should do, and the main character realizes that everything didn't turn out as bad as she expected. After all, the woman did not insult her or behave, she ignored her very existence, but at least spoke to her. The fact that the Empress arrived without an invitation suggests that she was interested. It doesn't matter whether this interest is positive or negative, but the fact is that it exists. Of course, this could mean that the woman will do much worse for the rest of her days in high society simply because of her desire. The main character knew that at this tea party there would be someone opposed to her, but she could not even imagine that it would be someone from the imperial family. The girls behind are still whispering, and the young lady thinks that even though she is a marquise, it is okay to stay away from the person who was just criticized by the former empress. The main character thinks that she didn't count on this and thinks that she can't do anything about it. But suddenly, someone turns to Chloe and says that given the fact that this is her first tea party, she must be nervous. The main character then turns around in shock and thinks who it could be, and then he sees Countess Hatfid there. Chloe claims that she is glad that at least she spoke to her, and the Countess asks if the girl's grandfather minds if she will join her. The main character replies that of course not. There are various delicacies on the table, and the Countess claims that she knows that it must not be easy for the young lady to hear such rude words, but she held up well. The main character, looking at the girls around her, claims that this is all thanks to her lessons, and for the Countess, this should all be natural. The woman claims that she knows that she always looks confident, but she remembers how she did not close her eyes the night before her debut as a countess, after which it turns to Chloe and says that she is doing well. The main character is a little surprised by this, and then understands with a smile on her face. that she would never have thought that this would be a member of the imperial family, and perhaps they have more in common than she thought. So Chloe thanks the woman. The Countess merely takes a sip of her tea and then states that there is a specific reason why the venerable Empress came to attend the tea party before asking if the lady recognizes her. The main character says that, of course, if the lady doesn't mind sharing with her. The woman claims that there is nothing special about it, so she will leave it to her discretion. After which, she claims that the venerable Empress may be hostile towards the young lady and her personal experience. Chloe asks what she means, and the women claim that, besides the current Emperor Rudolph, she has 2 more daughters. The youngest daughter, Olivia, broke all ties with the imperial family and left the capital, to be with the commoner I fell in love with. The family begged her to stay, but the girl renounced her title in order to marry him and become a commoner herself. The main character says that it's clear now, but she herself thinks that marriage against the will of the family is a brave act. But for Her Majesty, it must be very difficult even just to see her daughter. Perhaps she believes that her daughter has been defamed by the imperial family, or she may last even longer out of love for her daughter. Somehow, the young lady now knows that the woman came all this way just to humiliate her, and the Countess claims that soon after this, Olivia fell into eternal sleep far from there, and her husband, who tried to escape after that, was also caught. The main character, in shock, asks if he decided to run away, and the woman replies that no one knows why, because it doesn't seem like he was a bad person. But nevertheless, this case was closed, and if the girl were alive, she would be about her age, so this happened quite a long time ago. After this, the venerable Empress was always against marriages between different social strata. Chloe says I understand, and the woman tells her to hold on, because those who don't know her can and will be on guard with her, but sooner or later someone will become friendlier when they get to know her better. There is no one in this world who is loved by everyone, so let the girl not pay attention to those who don't like her. The main character thinks that, according to what she has studied, Countess Hatweed is neutral in her alliances. In the Vrinicles family, everything was the same, but it cannot be said that they remained absolutely neutral. They preferred to lean towards those who were more useful at certain moments. But here the woman was the first to lend her a helping hand while the others tried to avoid her, and her Naledi would say that today she found something incredibly valuable. Chloe, with a sincere smile on her face, states that she is overwhelmed by Countess Hatweed's kindness today. The girls, seeing the young lady's smile, are a little surprised. And not only girls. After all, the Countess is also a little shocked. This makes the woman soften her gaze a little and thinks that this girl is truly incredible. At this time, the Marquis is riding in a carriage. He remembers someone saying that the venerable Empress put on an interesting spectacle at the tea party today. The blonde thinks that he is sure she spoke calmly, but the Empress's words were like daggers. Her Highness is known for her prejudices, and the guy is sure that she does not allow even the slightest possibility that the same Ash Vrinicle could fall in love. Most likely, she believes that the guy bought her for some ulterior motive, or that Chloe is using him to climb the social ladder. The Empress cannot bring herself not to look for ulterior motives. Otherwise, she will blame herself for immersing her daughter in crippled Islam. Without realizing it, she showed her anger to escape her growing feelings of guilt. The blonde thinks she's just a tired old woman and wonders if Chloe is okay. After all, considering how caring and kind-hearted she is, he is afraid that the girl will simply keep everything to herself. He looks coldly to the side and tells them to stop the carriage. After all, it looks like the dirty rodent has slipped past the guards. The guy understands that he needs to constantly keep his eyes open, otherwise he would have long ago plunged into eternal sleep. The guy makes his way between the leaves, and when he moves one of the branches, he sees that someone is sitting there. It turns out to be Chloe's ex-husband. The blonde thinks the guy thought that because this territory is so large, he won't be caught. The brown-haired man looks and thinks, "Where's the young lady Marquise?" thinking how naive it is on his part. The main character's ex-husband is still trying to find her, and Ash kicks him in the back, and why the guy falls to the ground and asks in shock who he is. But then Joseph sees that this is the Marquis, and the blonde claims that he cannot understand why the guy is hiding in him in the garden, considering that their deal was concluded long ago, and the Marquis claims that he thinks Joseph does not know that a century ago, entering the territory of the nobility was punishable by death. The young lady's ex-husband just snorts, but then realizes that it's better not to do that. And he claims that he wanted to say "my lord," and the guy must have been mistaken, because he was simply worried that he had sold him too plain of a girl. But the Marquis insists that he should stop chattering, which makes Joseph a little surprised. And Ash tells him to tell him that he was sniffing around like a rat after he was paid a decent amount. Joseph gets a little scared by this and thinks what's wrong with the Marquis, because he thought he was just another sissy lord. Camilla found out which noble family Chloe ended up in, and although it took more time due to the fact that aristocrats were involved in this matter, it was nevertheless not so difficult because their wedding is now on everyone's lips. Although the rumors were very different from what actually happened, no one said a word about the fact that he bought his wife at an auction, and on the contrary, they said that he fell in love with a commoner who was in trouble, and now he is courting her and even received the emperor's permission to marry her. Even among the upper echelon nobility, this did not cause a stir. But the guy thinks what will happen if they find out that the Marquis bought her. And he clearly didn't want the world to know about his little secret. Chloe, of course, too. She will definitely pay him for his silence, and that is easy money. The guy was waiting for the opportunity to threaten Chloe with this, because it would be easier to manipulate her, and it would scare her so much that she would immediately rush for the money. But the brown-haired man thinks why he had to stumble upon the Marquis. Now he claims to my lord that he just wanted to know how his ex-wife was doing, and it's difficult for him to even just talk when he looks at him like that. The blonde says that he doesn't remember telling a piece of trash like him who he is, but considering how he managed to sneak into his garden, the guy must have been able to find out, after which he asks if it was the work of his mistress. Joseph thinks how the Marquis found out about the blonde, who says that his money must have run out, after which he throws him a bag of money and claims that it would be better for the guy to disappear from there and not even think about seeing Chloe again. This only makes Joseph angry and then turns to my lord. And he claims that he really seems to love the young lady, but she is not as perfect as he thinks. Ash tells the guy to get lost, and the brown-haired guy asks if he knows how many men the girl seduced with her appearance. But she deceived him with her innocent face, and how did the girl flirt and suck up then? But in fact, she is no better than a log and not worth anything, reacts. After all, she doesn't even know how to satisfy a man. And one day she went to a neighbor's house to borrow a needle, but Joseph claims that he knows it was just an excuse, and she wanted to meet her husband. What he means is that he managed to knock out all these bad habits from her, but worry about the Marquise. And that's why he's there, because he's just worried that such an outstanding person has fallen into her trap, and if you don't keep an eye on her, the girl will behave like a corrupt girl. The blonde then moves a little closer to the guy and claims that he understands what he's talking about. But then he asks why he should pay because he loves the young lady. Joseph, shocked by this, asks what he is talking about and understands that everything should be different. The blonde only claims that for now, his beloved wife does not want anything to happen to the guy, so if he plunges him into eternal sleep now, he may deprive her of the opportunity to personally get even with him, and then she will be tormented until the end of her days by the memories of the fact that he is with her did. So Ash tells the guy to get out of his garden if he values his life. And the main character's past husband doesn't think that when the Marquis kicked him, he was taken by surprise, but now when he sees him, he might be able to win in a fight. And after all, there is no one nearby yet, so he is confident that he will be able to defeat the Marquis, since he often had to fight in all sorts of alleys, and even a handsome aristocrat like him will become more modest after a good thrashing. Joseph grabs the money and says that he forgot to tell the Marquis something, and his motto is an eye for an eye, after which Joseph attacks the main character with his fists. But the blonde just grabs his hand and squeezes it so hard that the guy starts screaming. A short time later, he is already in the mansion and thinks how Joseph dared to enter the territory of the nobility and try to attack the aristocrat. He is a stupid and ignorant idiot, and the young man thinks how he dared to enter the territory, and try to attack the aristocrat. But he quickly gave up and ran away after he threatened him. The blonde thinks that if he had done everything his way, he would have dealt with him long ago, but he promised Chloe that he would take into account her wishes. If the girl wanted to take revenge on him, he would definitely help her. And even if she wants to ask him, he will accept this desire. But in any case, he will not let Joseph escape just like that. The wind, just like him, will not hesitate to oppose the one whom he considers weaker. And the guy can only hope that he will not return, so let him thank fate for only one broken arm. Ash thinks that he needs to send someone to keep an eye on him, and if this piece of crap, after his warning, dares to do something else, next time the Marquis will not let him go just like that, and will turn his life into a living hell, although he is sure that he knows firsthand what it's like. The main character is in her room at this time reading a book, but suddenly, she hears someone entering the room. It turns out to be the Marquis. When he sees the young lady, he just smiles, and then asks if she was waiting for him. The main character thinks that she will miss this smile very much and will never see it again, after which she answers that yes, and when the guy sits down next to her, he claims that he heard that the young lady had some pleasantries at the tea party. The young lady replies that the venerable empress suddenly decided to visit him too. The girl thinks that Betsy must have told him, and the Marquis claims that since she wasn't on the guest list, the young lady must have been surprised. Chloe says that, yes, and she thinks that she was trying to deliberately make her look bad, and she seems to not like that the Marquis is marrying someone who is inferior to him in different ways. And in the sense, they add that it's true that she and Ash are from different worlds, and it doesn't matter whether they show it or not, but the girl knows that many in high society are against their marriage. The blonde claims that the venerable empress can be understood because the Vrinakles are direct descendants of the imperial family, so the woman thinks that she should look after them. After which, the blonde asks for forgiveness for the fact that the young lady had to go through such hassle. After which, the young man suggests getting to know each other better, and one day he is sure that the young uncle will decide that she wants to trust such a charming and wonderful gentleman who sits opposite her, only thinking about his beautiful wife. The lady with brown hair smiles at this and asks what this silly fellow is talking about, and the Marquis says that he loves Chloe so much, and for the sake of her attention he doesn't mind even begging a little. After which, the young man puts his hand on the main character's arms and claims that he really thinks so. Chloe says that she knows, and the guy says that if something suddenly bothers her, she should definitely tell him about it, because he is afraid that the girl will keep everything to herself as usual. Chloe then says that it's okay, and if she can't handle something on her own, then she'll tell him about it, but she's fine at the moment. After all, after the venerable empress left, Countess Hatfid drank tea with her, so she's fine and there are still a lot of invitations, so she wants to give it her all. The girl thinks that for some reason she wants to become someone worthy of being with him. The Marquis then claims that his wife is very brave, and he believes that only a girl always makes an effort is admirable, and the main character says that he is exaggerating. After all, she is not at all brave, and the young lady is afraid of many things and constantly stresses herself out. The blonde claims that at least the fact that she was able to go through all this hell is enough, and then thanks that the young lady returned to him. The girl thinks that thanking someone is because he is simply alive, and she knows that it is impossible to explain why you love someone, but this guy's love is always so kind and tender. Ash asks if she has chosen where she will go next time, and the girl replies that there were many influential people from high society at this tea party, so next time she is thinking of visiting a place where she can meet a more diverse crowd, and perhaps Lady Irene will come to the event. The young lady understands that she cannot please everyone, but if she can improve her reputation even a little, then attending various events is her main task. Ash claims that he thinks this is a great idea, and he understands that it would be better if he did not tell her about the meeting with that trash. He does not want the young lady to start worrying even more. It took her heart a long time to calm down after the experience, and it takes a long time even if someone is surrounded by anyone. After all, he knows this firsthand. To be betrayed by someone, to love someone, and to experience the immersion in the eternal sleep of all your loved ones. The young man was deprived of everything and was saved by a ray of light and the most unexpected people. So now it was his turn to become that person for Chloe. The young man tells her not to worry about expenses, and the girl should prepare her outfit as carefully as a knight prepares his armor before a battle. After all, no one will look down on her, so let her spend a little for him. The brown-haired woman then thanks the guy, but claims that she doesn't need to spend a lot because she is simply grateful to the young man for the opportunity to make her own decisions. The blonde thinks how the young lady manages to be so charming. The guy asks if she really doesn't ask for much, and the girl claims that she wouldn't say that, considering that she wants someone specific in her life, and she's just glad that Ash always supports her. The guy claims that he can also give her power and wealth, even if she asks. The girl claims that, although the way he says it is a little scary, she is also grateful to him for that. The young lady claims that she knows that if she needs support, he will always be there. The blonde says that Chloe has learned to flirt well, and if she continues to look at him like that, and also her arms accidentally hug him around his waist, then he will fall in love with her again before he can blink an eye. The girl claims that she didn't mean anything like that, and the guy claims that everything is fine, and he knows a lot about the two of them. The young lady asks what this sly fox is talking about. The young man in response to this only asks another question and asks if he can be seen wagging his tail. Chloe just laughs at this, and the blonde takes her hand and claims that the girl can always tell him about something if she wants. Kissing Chloe's hand, he claims that he will always be on her side, and the young lady claims that if you think about it, he always asks to tell how she is doing, but never tells how he is doing. The guy asks if this is true, and after Chloe answers yes, he claims that then the girl can ask him any question if she is so interested. The main character then asks if she can ask 2 questions. The blonde says that she can ask even 3 questions, and if she wants me. The main character then turns to the guy and asks what his parents were like, and the young man asks if she was interested. The girl replies that yes, and she wants to know more about them because they were the ones who gave their loving son food, and she heard that they went into eternal sleep from illness when the guy was a child, and she would like to get to know them. Ash claims that his parents were great people. The father was a kind man, and one of those who was extremely honest in everything, and the mother always told her son with an unbreakable smile what she really thought. He was an only child, so the girl can only imagine how much love he received, but the guy thinks that, in truth, there was someone else. And although from the outside it seemed that continuous love reigned, he cannot say that their relationship was unambiguous. The main character says that it's understandable that he must have been very sad when he lost them, and in her thoughts she adds that so was she. The guy claims that, yes, and he quite thinks that his parents died unexpectedly, and even before the opportunity arose to find out the reason for their immersion in eternal sleep, pretending that he cared, one person became close to him. As far as the young man knows, he was somehow involved in everything that happened, and the bodies of his parents were quickly buried. They suspect that they fell into eternal sleep from some kind of infection. There was no time to investigate other reasons for falling into eternal sleep, and when he realized what their cruel plan was, it was already too late. The guy ran away, vowing to take revenge on them one day, and that's when he met the young lady. The girl will never know that she has become a ray of light in his life full of despair. So now he asks Chloe if he can tell her a secret. The girl asks what the secret is, and the young man replies that he wants to tell her a secret that no one knows about, and this is not a very pleasant story. So he asks if the young lady will agree to listen to her. Chloe answers something, of course, and she wants to know everything about him. The young man smiles in response to this, and then claims that according to the official version, his parents plunged into eternal sleep due to an infection, but in fact, they were poisoned. Someone they trusted the most. The main character is a little shocked by this, and the guy claims that his parents have always had good health. So when they suddenly fell ill and died a few days later, everyone on the estate thought that it was due to a dangerous infection, because there was no other explanation for their sudden and simultaneous death. But they were poisoned by someone who was lower in status than them, and when the guy found out the truth, he changed the chain. He was so shocked that his ears turned green, but he could not do anything, because the conspirators were much more powerful than him. All the young man could do was run away and hope that one day, when the time came, he would be able to avenge the death of his parents. Now the guy claims that he was too small to do anything, so he ran away. So he understood the young lady when she felt helpless because she couldn't do anything. Chloe tells Ash that she is sorry, and the guy then continues his story and claims that when he returned, he was able to make that man pay for what he did all these years. Although it took a little longer than he expected, so he finally found Chloe. The main character understands that she always thought that behind the Marquis's smile, there was something hiding, something worse than she could imagine. But Ash was able to handle it all alone. While she was able to do this only thanks to his love and care, so the girl thinks how hard it was for him. She turns to the Marquis and claims that he is truly amazing, and the guy asks if she really thinks so. But Chloe then remembers something and turns to Ash and asks if the forbidden room is his parents' bedroom. The guy replies that no, and now he uses their bedroom as his own, and that room contains memories of those days when he was truly happy, so he is simply embarrassed to show it to anyone. The young man asks if the girl wants to enter her, and the main character replies that she is curious. But if the guys don't want it, then that's okay. The young man only smiles in response to this, and then puts his head on his wife's shoulder. Then he claims that his Chloe is too charming. The main character thinks about this word with a smile, and she understands that the guy has never said this to her before. Much more charming than her because he's like a puppy. But his hackneyed phrases are not so bad, so the girl thanks him for coping with all the difficulties and claims that she is happy to be with him. The young man then asks to stroke his head, and the girl does so, smiling. But then she asks who has already put his parents into eternal sleep, and he answers that he always knew that one day he would tell her about it and just didn't think that this moment would come so soon. But it was his uncle, and he was his father's half-brother. After his parents were poisoned, he inherited the title of Marquis, and the man was smart, but as soon as a person like him decides to do something treacherous, he is even capable of betrayal. Chloe then turns to Ash with some excitement, and the guy claims that with the help of the love of the young lady, he was able to cope with everything and regained his rightful title of Marquis. And after all, everyone who was to blame for plunging his father into eternal sleep suffered a well-deserved punishment. The girl thinks something. The way he smiles when he talks about such a sad and painful time is similar to how she was hiding behind the curtain of her indifference to the world. The battle for the right to become the head of an illustrious noble family between the young but rightful heir, his experienced relatives who, through cunning, achieved their position for years. There is nothing more likely to become the scandal of the century, and such a story would certainly spread throughout the empire. He claims that no one knows about this. Apart from a few members of the imperial family, even if anyone knew, they would not dare to speak about it publicly. And in his thoughts, he adds that this is because they were afraid of his anger. The moment they dared to open their mouths, he would have come not only for them, but to make sure that everyone who spread false rumors had disappeared. The main character says that she herself understands that Ash's parents fell into a normal sleep even before them. Even though the guy was a little older than her, he was still a child. The situation was so terrible that he had to flee, but he was able to change everything. But this is already enough to show his incredible fortitude. Chloe thinks that at that time, besides sending Doria to prison, she did nothing to take revenge on her offenders. And it's not that she believed in everyone's forgiveness for any wrongdoing, but she just wanted to make every effort to move on and not get bogged down in the swamp of the past. The girl now asks what the young man thinks and whether it is stupid that she does not fight against those who betrayed her. Ash replies that everyone makes different choices, and the young lady's decision not to seek revenge was not wrong. After all, although he would punish them using any available methods, he cannot say that the girls should do the same thing because they are different. And the guy asks, doesn't he constantly remind her of this because he will always respect her choice and will always be on her side? The main character then turns to Ash and wonders if there was someone in her life, apart from her parents, who cared so much about her. The young man kisses his wife with all tenderness. A short time later, the girl is already at the event, and he thinks that, unlike the last tea party, Lady Neela's charity evening took place inside a large hall because there were those who came to donate money and those who came to buy. There were many people there from different walks of life, from the nobility to wealthy peasants. The young lady thinks that she attended such parties with her parents when she was a child, and her parents often attended these events because it was a good way to meet new people in the industry. But unlike the ladies who refused to approach her out of fear of the venerable empress, there were those who decided to just say hello. There were really a lot of people. The reasons for their interest varied. Some were curious, others simply wanted to exploit her connection with Ash. And there were even those who envied her or were hostile. But occasionally, there were those who were really glad to meet her. But a commoner girl will become a marquise like the main character of a love story. Chloe knew very well that her very existence was a separate reason for conversation. But suddenly she noticed the Marquis's vrinacles, so she turned to her. The main character is a little surprised by this and thinks that this is a very familiar voice. And when he turns around, he sees that it is Grace Randall. The main character just looks at her coldly and greets Lady Randall. The girl realizes that Grace Randall and Stephen Randall are a couple who lived next door and often visited their parents. Chloe's father would have worked in trade and started with a small store, and then developed in this business himself. Mom was from a distant foreign country, and she had no one here, and therefore, when they moved to the outskirts of the capital, there were no friends left at all, so they had good relations with their neighbors. And when her parents plunged her into eternal sleep, the Radnell family was the only one who could she contact? And it was they who reported that his father's business was on the verge of bankruptcy. And they were also the ones who found her a job in an orphanage, so maybe they also didn't know that the manager would be like that. They provided work so far from the capital and did not look for it after, but no matter how it was for them, no one therefore hoped for more. So she no longer asked about them and did not poke her nose into other people's affairs, because it was painful to admit that those who took care of her after plunging into eternal sleep, her parents, were only using her. But unfortunately they met again, and since that happened, she is not going to back down. The girl received wounds that are so great that she no longer wants to turn a blind eye to it. The main character claims that they have not seen each other for a long time, and it seems 10 years. But this is the first time since they sent her to work in an orphanage. The woman just smiles, but then changes this smile to a friendly one and claims that this is true. The girl thinks that her equanimity may indicate that she has enough experience or that there is no reason to worry. After all, a woman may think that despite the title of a young lady, she is clumsy in communicating with people. The main character says that they seem to be doing well and asks if they received the title. Chloe realizes that Mrs. Randall was an ordinary middle-class person, but her clothes and accessories are much better now than before. In addition, her last name most likely changed. The woman replies that yes, they also met a baron who was soon to go to sleep and had no descendants, so he gave them his title and they changed their last name. The main character thinks what a touching story this is, and before she could have believed it, but Rendell couldn't afford to buy even the lowest titles. Chloe may have been a commoner, but she lived a rich life. My father's business flourished. But then these people told Hay about the debts. Hey, the girl was so heartbroken, that's why no one. I didn't listen to them except them. What happened to Chloe was like a hurricane. The girl was in a hurry to escape from all this, so, unfortunately, there was no time to check what belonged to her, and she was so depressed that she didn't even think to look into her father's or lawyer's office to check all the assets. If her parents hadn't gone bankrupt, and the Randall family could have pocketed her father's fortune, that would have been enough to purchase the title. Chloe thinks that she was a commoner, but was still able to receive a basic education thanks to her parents' wealth. She understands everything because she went through it. The girl understood that she should not neglect personal boundaries, and this was her experience. The woman turns to the young lady and claims that she wants to tell her something. Then she claims that after that, when she went to the shelter along the people with whom her parents worked, they panicked that the deal fell through, so they made a new one, but the women still feel that they are indebted to her because they were intimidated and took up the case with which they had previously have not encountered. Therefore, they could not find her, and they only heard that the young lady had left the orphanage for another place. So the woman is glad to see that she has grown up and become such a beauty, and also married the Marquis. The woman claims that nothing else was saved, but they bought the office where her father previously worked, so she is glad that she was able to meet the young lady and return it. After which she hands over the key to the office and claims that when she was stained, she developed the habit of carrying a bunch of keys with her everywhere. But thanks to her, she can give this key to the girl now, and this is the place where her father worked, so the woman asks if she remembers where it is. The young lady picks up the key and claims that, yes, she remembers when Chloe's parents died. Ton cried a lot and was afraid to be alone, so Mrs. Randall often stayed with her overnight. And if she carried this key for years to give it away, then one might think that all her actions were merciful. So the young lady wonders if everything she's been through has made her so sensitive. The woman says that in any case she should come whenever she wants, because all the documents are left in the office, and the other women whisper among themselves and ask if this is not the Marquise Brinicle. And the main character says that she is uncomfortable and offers to pay a fair price. The girl understands that it is dangerous to suddenly accept her kindness like this, but in the past she already felt it and cried. But now everything is different. The woman claims that it's not worth it because her parents were so kind to her, and besides, it was originally hers, and Chloe then says that she will accept this key. The Marquise then claims that even though it took a lot of time, she is glad that this thing returned to the owner, and when she re-registers the office to the young lady, she will send her the documents because she had to manage everything. So they first registered the office in her name, but they made all the arrangements to return it to the young lady at any time. The woman then claims that she still has planned meetings, so she will go and claim that she is glad that they were able to meet by chance, after which she says that she hopes they will have such a chance again. And today she came there without her husband, so next time she would like to come together. The main character agrees and claims that she also hopes for this, and the Marquise then turns around and leaves. The girl silently looks after her. A little while later, looking at the key in her hands, the young lady wonders if this is true. And so much time has passed, but the key, although old, is clean, and as if time has passed only for her. If this couple really deceived her and stole her inheritance, that woman would not have approached her first and would not have handed her the key to the office. Chloe wonders if this could be because she has had so many difficulties in her life that doubting has become a habit. The main character's maid says that her parents probably had a really big deal, and the girl replies that yes, that's true, because they started in the provinces, and then the scale increased and they came to the capital. The blonde says that the Raymond couple are known as entrepreneurs, and, it seems, they started their business 10 years ago, found good business partners, and with their help gradually developed. They say that now their business is thriving. Chloe says that, and as the maid heard, they started with a deal with her parents' former colleagues. But Mom and Dad's business went bankrupt after their dive into eternal sleep, so the young lady can't say for sure that the Raymond family took advantage of it. The girl thinks that if her parents really went bankrupt due to improper investment, then she should be grateful to the Baron and his wife because they merged the business and their families with theirs so that her father's business partners would not suffer damage, and after all, the difficulties that she overcame. The young lady doesn't want to believe that the Randall family did everything just for their own gain, but in any case, her instinct tells him that she should be careful. Chloe thinks that she will need to visit the office first because she will still have to see Baron Raymond and his wife at least once more. She will need to obtain a transfer of title certificate from them, so when she decides how to treat them. Grace Raymond is the Baron's wife. No one can even imagine how much effort we had to put in for this title. And of course, they started from a position far superior to others. But even if they knew nothing about business, the effort was not in vain. 10 years ago, they had nothing, but a chance arose, which they immediately took advantage of. And after that, they finally had a child. Or rather, they were twins. At the same time, a daughter and a son were born. Now there was no limit to the sewing of the newly made parents. But one day there was a meeting that became a great opportunity. The woman, seeing the young lady at the banquet, thought that this was a very familiar face and that she was somehow similar to that child. One of the women claimed that this famous wife of the Marquis of Brinicle, and Grace probably arrived later, and therefore did not hear when she was introduced. The woman thinks that now this is one of the most discussed persons, and the fact is that the Marquis fell in love with her, who was a commoner at first sight, and immediately married her. Even despite the difficulties, he received permission for the marriage from the Emperor himself, so that no one could object to her new position. The woman wondered if the Marquis's wife was Chloe, but the shelter where she worked was located far from the capital, but because of the affection that appeared, Grace found her a good place. However, she asked the director of the orphanage to find a job for Chloe to keep her there as long as possible. The young lady has a beautiful face, and the woman was sure that she could get a pretty decent husband, but now she can't believe that the Marquis became him. And not just a Marquis, but specifically the Marquis of Brinicles, in whose family the blood of the emperor flows. An informant reported that the Empress Dowager suddenly appeared at a tea party, which was attended only by high-ranking guests, and she humiliated the commoner, but the ruler, although she belongs to the imperial family, has long since left the social world, and also among those gathered there, the Marquis of Brinicles had a higher title. Therefore, one could simply pretend that this was a stranger, but after becoming Baroness Grace, Raymond learned what fame and power are, which cannot be bought with money. She could already ignore the desire coming from the heart, and the woman understood that she could use the girl to create close relationships that could be useful in the future. However, now that the Countess had children, she felt a slight remorse for what happened earlier. She remembers the young lady's big eyes full of tears. Then Chloe did not doubt their words and did not understand anything. The woman's husband took the initiative, and she simply nodded her head and was a little sorry. But if she could turn back time, she would still have done the same, because in any case, the girl knows nothing, and the woman understands that it's worth the risk. When she had no money, she began to carry a key with her, and now it is a reminder that they are worth being reckless, because who knew that this key could be useful, and they say that sometimes you need to give up little to get something more, and now is just such a case. So she approached the young lady and introduced herself. But Chloe recognized her immediately, and the woman was a little surprised to see the indifference on her face. But at the same time, the girl did not look like a cunning person. Even though the smile disappeared from her face, the feeling of innocence remained as before, so it seems possible. Now the woman is sitting with a cup of tea and thinking that this is for sure, and when her husband comes, she will need to decide what to do next. After all, then they will be able to rise even higher. The main character is sitting in her room with a teddy bear at this time. The girl thinks that the more she looks at him, the more it seems that this bear looks like the one he had in childhood. Well, if you think about it, he's better, because at that time, she wrote down her experiences in her personal diary and hid them in a teddy bear. And the girl with whom she was friends found these notes, read them, and left answers there. Sometimes it was something small like I want to eat lamb stew for dinner, and sometimes it was really difficult experiences. The main character remembers how she claimed that her name was Chloe and asked what the blonde's name was. She claimed that her name was Erin. The young lady does not remember saying her last name, but she remembers blonde hair and blue eyes. At first glance, she seemed cute. But her cat-like, slightly arrogant expression and short answers to any questions were also cute. And soon they even began to sleep together holding hands. The young lady remembers the girl's smile and thinks it suited her so well. And after that, she remembers her husband's smile. The girl realizes that Erin and Ash have a similar aura, and even though the memories are blurry, it seems that they are brother and sister. However, the main character understands that this is impossible because Ash is definitely the only son of the Marquis of Brinicle. Erin was a child whom her parents picked up on the street. But there was something else. Mom and Dad didn't really tell her anything, and she didn't even think about anything because she was so excited that she had a friend. Erin came out of nowhere and also disappeared into nowhere, without even having time to feel the sadness of separation. Chloe faced even greater grief when her parents fell into eternal sleep, so the young lady wonders how this girl is doing now. She hopes that the person from her happy memories has a difficult life like hers, or that today was a very hard day. She met a lot of people, and among them there was even Grace. Well, suddenly someone turns to the young lady and claims that he would like her to tell all this to him, and not to the teddy bear. The main character is surprised by this. When she turns around, she sees her husband. Looking at his face, the girl asks when he came, and the guy replies that he tried to make a little noise, but his habit of walking silently arose a long time ago, and it is more difficult than he thought. The main character then understands that if you think like this, Ash always hides his approach, and he spent a long time in prison and fear that he had become sensitive to sound. The young lady remembers her own and bad experiences and thinks no matter how relaxed he may seem, you can see how wary he is. And this is more like a habit than a conscious action. The young lady heard that he was forced to fight to regain his title, and maybe it was then that this habit formed, and the guy behaves this way even without realizing it. So Chloe thinks about how terrible and difficult his life has been, and then claims that everything is fine. The guy says that if something happened, she can tell him about it, and the girl understands that people cannot so easily throw away their past, and this is something that needs to be accepted and moved on, both for her and for Ash. But the girl thinks that everything will be okay because they are together. The main character says that she's fine because that's how it is, and the guy then says okay. The girl then looks at the boy a little, and he only looks at her questioningly in response. And the young lady then claims that he is very similar to her childhood friend. The blonde asks who this friend was, and the main character replies that her name was Erin, and it seems she was older than her. And now that she thinks about it, the situation seems absurd because they were close with this girl, but she knows nothing about her, and at that time she was simply happy, so she didn't even think about asking her about anything. The guy claims that this is some kind of dubious person, and the main games do not answer that she agrees, and now understands that she behaved recklessly, but for the entire time that she was with Erin, she did nothing wrong, and this was a child whose parents died suddenly, and she got lost and then fainted on the road. Erin is very beautiful, so it was dangerous for her to stay on the street. She did not say anything about what happened and was often silent. At first, she acted wary of her, like a stray cat, but then they became friends and began to have fun together. Their main game does not answer that of all the friends she had, only she felt comfortable with her, and although their characters were the complete opposite, this brought them closer together even more. The guy says that judging by the fact that the young lady says who you all are in the past tense, they didn't see her again. The girl claims that she left before her parents immersed in an eternal groan, leaving a note saying that she was going to find her relatives. Erin wrote that she would definitely return and repay them for the favor, but then Mom and Dad fell into eternal sleep. Chloe claims that she is glad that the girl then decided to go her own way. And the guy, looking at the young lady, is a little silent. And then she claims that that girl has no conscience because she abandoned the people who saved her from death like that. Chloe says that means she had her reasons, and Erin isn't such a bad person. After all, despite the fact that she was going through difficult times, this was a friend that the young lady could rely on. The main character, looking at the expression on Ash's face, remembers that this girl also sometimes made such a face, when it was difficult for her to open up, or when she wanted to understand another person. Therefore, the main character thinks that they are very similar, and so much so that if they were of the same sex, the young lady would immediately think that it was her. Erin said she had an ordinary family, but this girl acted like she was from a noble family. Her uncle was chasing her, so while running away, she got lost and fell on the road, where her parents found her, and even though the girl was still a child, it was clear that she had a woman's body, because they even took a bath together several times, so she's sure. The blonde just looks at the young lady, and the main character claims that perhaps, like the guy said, she was not a reliable friend. But at this time, the young lady was happy and wants to believe that Erin is a good friend. After all, she sadly thinks that all the people in the world will be the same as those she encountered in her life. Until now, Chloe cannot completely trust others and understands perfectly well that this will always be the case. But she decided to try to think positively, even if she only met people with bad intentions. Definitely not everyone around is like that. And the girl thinks that she would like to have memories of at least one good person in her past. Chloe claims that she was very surprised when she saw this teddy bear, and that she and Erin used a similar one to exchange notes among themselves. On the one hand, there was a secret hole in the bear's ear where they hid notes, and the fact that a young lady could share something like that with good people seems incredible. The guy is then silent for a bit, and then claims that if the factory that produces teddy bears is also engaged in their production, then such a coincidence is possible. After which, he brings his hand closer to Chloe's hair and says, "Wait." Her hair is a little disheveled due to the fact that she is listening to the teddy bear. The young man straightens his wife's hair, which makes her a little embarrassed. The guy looks at her with a kind smile and then begins to approach her face, and he kisses his wife, after which, holding her hand, he claims that he felt it even then. And it seems like she's fine. The main character is only embarrassed by this and does not know what to answer.